Chapter 147. Imo-Shir's telekinesis was fighting against hundreds of telekinesis masters. Naturally, he had no time to care about the millions of human-headed spiders. What's more, there were nearly 100,000 strong mutated zombies. The Zombie King said coldly, "Imo-Shir, don't be stubborn. How long can you last by yourself?" Just as he was talking, Imo-Shir flicked his right finger gently. A blood-red thread as thick as a finger shot out more than 50 meters in an instant. It exploded in the air. But it didn't explode into smoke and fire like a bomb. Instead, it exploded into more spider webs. Thousands of spider webs. These blood-red spider webs instantly spread out to a radius of several kilometers. Then it shrouded the ground. After that, it formed a huge spider web that enveloped the entire base. Under the sunlight, this huge spider web reflected a blood-red light. A human-headed spider didn't care about the spider web at all. It planned to directly pass through the spider web and jump toward the city wall. In fact, it did pass through the spider web. But after passing through, it turned into a dozen pieces. A strong mutated zombie also tried to directly crash through the spider web with its body. After all, in its opinion, how could a mere spider web stop it? However, it was obvious that it was wrong. Before it jumped, it was still a complete zombie. After landing, it had already scattered into pieces of meat on the ground. With just this wave, more than 100,000 human-headed spiders and thousands of strong mutated zombies were cut into pieces of meat. All creatures, whether zombies, humans, or mutated beasts. At this moment they were all horrified. This seemingly soft blood-red spider web was actually so sharp. Seeing this, the remaining zombies didn't dare to use their bodies to fight anymore. They all turned into sharp claws and blades and slashed at the blood-red spider web. However, they could only shake the spider web at most but couldn't cut it at all. The blood-red spider web was actually so tough. Seeing this, the Zombie King slowly shook his head. His gaze moved to Imo-Shir. "You are really getting more and more amazing. If humans could be as strong as you, I wouldn't have to spend so much effort to infect so many humans into zombies. I really can't bear to kill you." Then he pointed to the sky in the distance. He said, "If the two of us fight with all our strength, the base below will be reduced to ruins. Let's go over there." The purpose of the King of Zombies was not to kill those human beings. Instead, he infected them all and turned them into zombies, hoping that a few of them could mutate into super-mutated zombies. Therefore, they naturally didn't want to destroy the humans in the base. A glimmer of light flashed through Imo-Shir's cold eyes. He didn't say anything, nor did he move. The Zombie King glanced at the nearly 100,000 zombies and the millions of human-headed spiders. He smiled and said, "Are you afraid that I'll cheat you? To trick you and let the zombies and human-headed spiders take the opportunity to attack the base?" Kikikik. A laugh that sounded half human and half zombie came out of his throat. "I am the King of Zombies, a level 10 super-mutated zombie. Why would I play tricks with you? Zombies aren't as despicable as humans." After that, he issued an order to all the zombies and human-headed spiders. "Without my orders, anyone who dares to attack the base will die." All the zombies and human-headed spiders were shocked. They all subconsciously took a few steps back. Only then did the King of Zombies flap his wings and slowly fly out. Imo-Shir's blood-red wings trembled slightly, and he slowly followed. However, at this moment a sudden change occurred. The King of Zombies suddenly flapped his wings and turned around abruptly. His right hand turned into a blood-red spear. This spear instantly extended a distance of 100 meters. Puff! It directly pierced through Imo-Shir's head. A smile appeared on the King of Zombies' face. "Imo-Shir, do you really think that only humans can play tricks? Too naive." However, at this moment, on the sentry tower, a figure instantly jumped out. This figure was so fast that it couldn't be seen by the human eye. After this figure jumped out, only a 100-meter-tall giant dragon shadow was left on the sentry tower. The next moment, this figure instantly arrived in front of the King of Zombies in the air. A black light flashed in his left hand, and the enhanced version of the bloodthirsty zombie executioner instantly slashed at the King of Zombies' face. It turned out that the Imo-Shir who was flying in the air earlier was only his virus clone. And his real body had been hiding on the sentry tower all along. What a joke! His flying speed wasn't even as fast as the dragon shadow step. How could he give up his advantage and foolishly fly into the air to get beaten up? And because the King of Zombies' speed was too fast, if he used any other moves, it would be dodged by it. And Imo-Shir's genetic martial arts needed a little bit of time to condense. In the little bit of time he took to sneak attack, there was no time to condense it. If he condensed it in advance, the King of Zombies would inevitably detect it. Therefore, with a thought, he took out the bloodthirsty zombie executioner and slashed at the king of zombies. However, kalala, an ear-piercing sound rang out. When the enhanced version of the bloodthirsty zombie executioner slashed across the king of zombies' body, it actually couldn't cut through its skin at all. Only a shallow white mark was left under its skin. At the same time, a series of sparks appeared. At the same time, the king of zombies' voice sounded in Imo-Shir's ears. "You think I don't know that you have a clone?" Jijijiji. The sounds coming out of its throat sounded more and more like that of a zombie. In the next moment, it stretched out its hand and directly hugged Imo-Shir. Then dozens of sharp spikes instantly popped out from its body. It was trying to pierce Imo-Shir into a sieve. However, it was also at this moment that blood-red scales appeared on the surface of Imo-Shir's body. A set of blood-red battle armor formed on its body. Under this set of blood-red battle armor, a Titan dragon breastplate condensed. And on its head, a dragon-shaped helmet condensed. Ka. Those dozens of sharp spikes pierced the blood dragon armor, but they were unable to break through the defense at all. Only a series of sharp sounds could be heard. The king of zombies' eyes suddenly focused. How was that possible? With its current strength, the bone spikes formed in its body could be said to be indestructible. They could even easily pierce through iron and stone. This kid was definitely not more than a level 5 great hunter. How could he withstand the attack of its bone spikes? It was also at this moment that a black crossbow appeared in Imo-Shir's right hand. This crossbow was directly pressed against the head of the king of zombies. Although the king of zombies was surprised by the defense of Imo-Shir's battle armor, at this moment, it saw that Imo-Shir had actually taken out an inconspicuous crossbow. It couldn't help but laugh again. "Do you know that I have an indestructible body? After reaching level 10 supermutation, I can have an indestructible body. In this world there is nothing that can break." Puff! Before it finished speaking, a wooden arrow had already been nailed into its head. Its arrogant voice came to an abrupt end. It was only at this moment that Imo-Shir finally spoke for the first time. "Then do you know that I have a chain crossbow?" Chapter 148. Jianghu's crossbow arrow made a powerful sound. Boom! It directly nailed into the zombie king's head. The zombie king's hoarse strange laughter came to an abrupt end. That sinister smile suddenly froze on its face. Its gaze looked at the hard crossbow in Imo-Shir's hand in disbelief. Its body had actually been broken by a mere wooden crossbow arrow. How was this possible? His body was the indestructible Vajra body. However, its shock did not last long. The next second. Boom! A soft sound. The crossbow arrow in its head actually exploded in an instant. On the surface, although the zombie king's head did not explode, its brain had already exploded into a mass of paste. Its eyes, nostrils, ears, and mouth all had blood gushing out. His appearance was very frightening. It turned out that Imo-Shir knew that although Jianghu's crossbow arrow could break everything, but the super-mutated zombie's self-healing ability was extremely terrifying. Even if it lost its head, it could still heal itself. Naturally, it could not be killed by a crossbow arrow. So Imo-Shir had already infused his dragon's will into this crossbow arrow. When the crossbow arrow nailed into the zombie king's head, the dragon's will hidden in the crossbow arrow directly exploded. Under the suppression of the dragon's will, the self-healing ability of the zombie king's cells almost completely disappeared. This was why the zombie king's head exploded in one fell swoop. But even so, Imo-Shir was still not at ease. When the zombie king's body fell down, his dragon's will had already followed the small hole that the crossbow arrow shot out and once again probed into its head. Then, starting from the head, it exploded all the way down. Boom 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 boom. A muffled sound came from the zombie king's body. In the end, its body crashed onto the ground with a bang. On the surface, its body looked intact. But only Imo-Shir knew that its body had already become a mass of paste. With his dragon's will suppressing the activity of the zombie king's cells, its self-healing ability could not be used at all. And Imo-Shir also discovered that the crossbow arrow itself carried another kind of virus. This virus was also extremely lethal to Virus X. Even if he didn't use the dragon will to blow up the zombie king's body, the virus would still cause great damage to the zombie king's body, making it unable to heal itself. At this moment, the zombie king was dead. In the sky, a pair of blood-red wings sprouted from Imo-Shir's back. It floated there quietly. Hoo! He finally spat out a mouthful of turbid air. This was the benefit of cultivating both the body and mind. For ordinary people, not to mention that they couldn't dual cultivate. Even if they could dual cultivate, no one would choose to do so. After all, whether it was strengthening one's body or mind, it would take a lot of time. The result of dual cultivation was that neither of them could reach great heights. However, Emo did not have this problem. With the sign-in system, his speed of improvement was far beyond that of ordinary people. Dual cultivation was not a problem at all. However, just as Emo's heart was about to relax, a voice suddenly rang out. A dragon will that was as huge as a mountain suddenly came crashing down on him. This dragon will was so enormous that it seemed like it was going to swallow him whole. Emo was a little surprised. There was actually a huge dragon will hidden in the zombie king's body. This dragon will was much stronger than his current level 2 dragon will. Moreover, this dragon will was just like the dragon will in Fan's Pure Mountain's dragon ruins. It also wanted to devour his dragon will and take over the magpie's nest. Emo smiled. Alright, since I can't resist, I'll just lie down and enjoy it. Soon, the incomparably powerful dragon will entered Emo's body. It domineeringly rushed towards Emo's brain. A hoarse voice came from the dragon will. I thought that the zombie king's indestructible body was already the strongest body on this broken planet. I didn't expect that I would encounter the indestructible body of 10,000 poisons. This is the heavens helping me, the plague dragon making a comeback. Kid, to be able to be devoured by me, Lord Plague Dragon, is your... However, just as it said this, its words abruptly stopped. In the next moment, this arrogant, domineering, and disdainful words turned into a scream. What? Impossible? No. A few seconds later, its dragon will was finally devoured by Emo. Emo felt that his dragon will was at least 10 times stronger. As long as he devoured this dragon will a few more times, his dragon will should be able to improve again. This dragon will naturally belong to the plague dragon. It was only now that Emo realized that in the dragon ruins, although the plague dragon's body couldn't break free, its dragon will had already split into many dragon wills and escaped. These dragon wills were hidden in many creatures. They were slowly waiting for an opportunity. As long as there was a dragon will in the future that could strengthen the body into a giant dragon's body, it could once again reappear in the world. Moreover, this plague dragon was very cunning. Every dragon will was independent. It was impossible for Emo to obtain information about the other dragon wills from this dragon will. He could only slowly think of a way to find it in the future. From the beginning of Emo's battle with the Zombie King until the Zombie King was killed and fell to the ground. Until he devoured the dragon will. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it happened in just over 10 seconds. The speed of his battle with the Zombie King was so fast that the humans below couldn't see it clearly at all. They only saw 2 shadows flash and Emo and the Zombie King hugged each other. After stopping for 2 to 3 seconds, the Zombie King's body fell to the ground. No one knew what kind of fierce battle Emo had experienced in these short 10 seconds. Whether it was his body or his dragon will. They had experienced a fierce battle that they could never imagine. If Emo didn't have the Blood Dragon armor, the Titan Dragon breastplate, and the Dragon will devour, he would have been the one to die. It was only at this moment that the shadow of the giant dragon that remained on the sentry tower slowly disappeared. Everyone looked at Emo in surprise. The Zombie King is dead. Mr. Emo won. Mr. Emo won. I knew it. Mr. Emo would definitely win. From the moment the Zombie King appeared, they knew that Mr. Emo would definitely win. Because according to past experience, Mr. Mo's strength was too terrifying. No matter what enemy he encountered, he would basically crush them. Naturally, they didn't think that Mr. Emo would lose. But they would never know how dangerous this battle was for Emo. Although there was no earth-shattering explosion, no meteorite falling from the sky. However, the danger was greater than any other time. This was the first time Emo had truly used his full strength since he obtained the system. Although he had used his full strength twice in the past, those 2 times, it was basically a full strength attack. It was also considered to crush the opponent. And this time he and the Zombie King had already exchanged several blows in those short few seconds. He had almost taken out all the trump cards that he could use under such circumstances. If the Zombie King hadn't been too careless and actually courted death by closing the distance, he wouldn't have been able to kill it at all. However, this wasn't the end. He extended his dragon will and directly pressed down on the human-headed spiders and strong mutated zombies outside the blood-colored spider web. Chapter 149. Emo killed the king of zombies and swallowed the plague dragon's dragon consciousness. This surprised all the humans but also frightened all the infected creatures. A strong mutant zombie widened its eyes. His grayish-white eyes were filled with shock. Another strong mutant zombie was also in disbelief. No zombie could have imagined such an ending. In their eyes, their king was a godlike existence. It was the strongest existence on Earth. But now their king was killed by a lowly human. How could they not be shocked? After they recovered from the shock, they were extremely frightened. This human was too strong. The only thing they could do now was to run away. So almost all the strong mutant zombies turned around and fled. However, could they escape? Immortal's dragon consciousness probed and attacked the human-headed spiders and strong mutant zombies outside the city wall. At the same time, the more than 100 psychic masters among the zombies once again twisted their psychic power into a huge, overwhelming psychic power, trying to stop Immortal's dragon consciousness. However, soon the eyes of all the psychic master zombies were full of fear. Because they felt that this human psychic power was at least 10 times stronger than before. Just now, the psychic power of hundreds of them could barely compete with this human psychic power. But now, this human's telekinesis was so powerful that it easily crushed their telekinesis. The next moment. Bang 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 bang, the bodies of all the psychic master zombies burst into a cloud of blood mist. It was like a huge firework. The blood mist of their heads flashed a wine-red light under the sun. However, this was just the beginning. Bang 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 bang, the bodies of nearly 100,000 strong mutant zombies directly burst. Bang 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 bang, the bodies of nearly 1,000,000 human-headed spiders directly burst. If one looked down from a high altitude, they would find that the C1 base was surrounded by a wine-red mist at this time. At this point, all the zombies were destroyed. All the human-headed spiders were destroyed. More than 100,000 people in the base once again witnessed Immortal's violence and dominance. The power of one person killed millions of people. This was not the first time they had met. But last time they were ambushed by ordinary zombies. This time, among the corpses, there were hundreds of thousands of level 8 and above mutated zombies. A strong zombie above level 8 was enough to throw the base into chaos. Their base would not be able to withstand 100,000 level 8 and above mutated zombies. In the face of such power, the hunter group could only be cannon fodder. However, with a single thought, Immortal detonated all the infected creatures, including the strong mutant zombies above level 8. His strength was so strong that no one dared to imagine it. Whew! Immortal let out another long sigh of relief. Finally, everything was settled. He took out 5 bottles of recovery potion and 2 bottles of brain cell recovery potion. He swallowed them all in one go. In this battle, on the surface, it seemed that he had the absolute advantage and he had been crushing everyone along the way. However, only he knew how much his body and brain had been drained. After swallowing all the recovery potions, his body began to recover rapidly. His dragon will was also rapidly recovering. His eyes fell on the corpse of the zombie king. He felt a little regretful in his heart. According to what the zombie king had said before, it should know a lot of things. It was a pity that in the battle just now, he had no time to use memory plunder on it. Otherwise, he should have been able to know what it was from its memory. Shaking his head, Immortal no longer bothered about this. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." Now that he had experience, he didn't have to sign in just after midnight anymore. Instead, he kept the sign-in opportunity. If something special happened on this day, or if he went to some special place and didn't have the opportunity to sign in, wouldn't it be a big loss? He kept the sign-in opportunity until before midnight. If nothing special happened, he would sign in. Now that he had killed the zombie king, this was naturally a special event. He should be able to sign something good. In his mind, the system's response immediately came: frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in event, killing the zombie king, sign in reward. 1 Zombie King Crystal Cores 10, sign in reward. 2 Zombie King's Memory, sign in reward. 3 Bloodthirsty Zombie Slayer, Ultimate Version. 1 sign in, 3 rewards. Although it took a lot of effort to kill the zombie king, it was definitely a profit. The first thing Immortal noticed was the zombie king's memory. He was just regretting that he couldn't plunder the zombie king's memory, but he didn't expect it to come so soon. Then it was the Bloodthirsty Zombie Slayer, Ultimate Version. Bloodthirsty Zombie Slayer, Ultimate Version, 1,000 times sharper than the strengthened version of the Bloodthirsty Zombie Slayer. It can cause great damage to the invincible Vajra body. Immortal was overjoyed when he saw this introduction. If he had the ultimate version of the Bloodthirsty Zombie Slayer earlier, he wouldn't have had to fight so tirelessly just now. Finally, he looked at the Zombie King's Crystal Core. Zombie King Crystal Core. The crystallization of the virus in the Zombie King's body can be used to strengthen the host's body. Immortal was secretly happy when he saw this. It turned out that in addition to the modification liquid, the Zombie King's crystal core could also be used to strengthen the body. He just didn't know if the effect of the Zombie King's crystal core was as strong as the modification liquid. But at this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on him. He should think about it when he returned to the zombie farm. Just as he was thinking, Happy came up to him. She looked at Immortality with eyes full of concern. Immortality grinned and patted her head. "I'm fine." It was only then that Happy felt at ease. When Immortality was fighting just now, all the 100,000 people in the base were more or less worried. But the others were worried that if Immortality was defeated, the entire base would be finished. Happy was the only one who was worried about Immortality. Every time Immortality fought, she would be worried. Immortality could naturally feel the concern in Happy's eyes. He took Happy's hand and said, "Let's go. Let's go home." Happy nodded obediently. Under the gazes of the crowd, he followed Immortality to the corpse farm. At this moment, everyone was a little puzzled. Mr. Mo was so strong, why would he like a mute girl? Was it because she was beautiful? But there were many beautiful girls in the base and they could talk and cause trouble. What was so good about her? In the end, they could only conclude that everyone had their own preferences. Of course, there were also some girls who were envious and jealous of Happy. Chapter 150. No wonder those girls were envious and jealous. What was the most important thing in the apocalypse? Living. That was the only thing that mattered. If they could have a boyfriend as powerful as Immortality, living wouldn't be a problem. Unfortunately, there was only one Immortality. Of course, there were also girls who had evil thoughts. However, when they thought of Immortality's ruthlessness, they decisively dismissed the idea. For the sake of Happy, Immortality didn't even let go of the former Chief Ma. There was an old saying that a dragon had a reverse scale, and those who touched it would die. Happy was Immortality's reverse scale. If they dared to have any ideas about Happy, wouldn't they be courting death? The base chief watched Immortality leave and was silent for a long time. When he came back to his senses, he said to the staff officer beside him, "Pass down the order. From now on, no one is allowed to provoke Mr. Mo's girlfriend. Violators will be killed on the spot." When the people around heard this, they were all stunned. Provoking a woman and killing her on the spot? Wasn't this a little too much? However, the staff officer understood the chief's meaning. Harsh laws were used in troubled times. If they didn't kill him on the spot, it wouldn't be enough to calm Mr. Mo's anger. If Mr. Mo was angered, it would definitely be a disaster for the entire base. Thinking of this, the staff officer's expression was solemn and he said solemnly, "Yes, Chief. Don't worry, from now on, no one will dare to provoke Mr. Mo's woman." Immortality and Happy returned to the zombie farm. He comforted Happy. Immortality returned to his house. With a thought, he took out a Zombie King's crystal core. This crystal core was the size of a fingernail. It looked wine red and crystal clear. Immortality pondered for a moment. How should he use this thing? Swallow it directly? It seemed a little disgusting to swallow something from a zombie's body directly. Although it was something that he had signed in from the system, it was still a little disgusting. It was like feeling disgusted when you saw Papa. Even if it was a Papa that he had signed in from the system, it still made people feel disgusted. Of course, there were people with profound skills who could directly go to the toilet. In any case, Immortality was in awe of that person and felt ashamed of his inferiority. Fortunately, when the crystal core entered his hand, it turned into a dark red mist. Then it followed Immortality's pores and sweat pores. It drilled into his body. Within Immortality's body, that familiar burning sensation came once again. However, this feeling was different from before. When the modification liquid was used, it was mainly used to modify cells, increase the toughness of cells and expand their capacity. Next was to strengthen the muscle tissue, bones, and blood vessels. However, the strengthening of the body by the crystal core mainly strengthened the whole body, the muscle tissue, the bones, and the blood vessels. It did not have much of a strengthening effect on the cells. Of course, the overall strengthening effect was extremely significant. In just 5 minutes, Immortality felt that the heat in his body had reached its limit. If his body temperature continued to rise, even a level 4 great hunter like him wouldn't be able to withstand it. Fortunately, his body temperature stopped rising after 5 minutes. Instead, he maintained this temperature for 2 minutes. 2 minutes later, his body temperature finally began to drop. At this moment, he could clearly feel that his muscles seemed to have undergone a round of tempering. His muscle strength had greatly increased. Under such circumstances, just the strength of his body alone was extremely terrifying. He even felt that even the genetic martial arts of hunters might not be able to cause harm to his body. Of course, this was just a feeling. As for whether it was true or not, he wouldn't be so bored as to find someone to test him with a genetic martial art. Wouldn't that be sick? At this moment he looked at his attribute interface again. Name, Mo Shi. Level 5 Great Hunter. Level 2 Long Yen Shi. Evolution path, Titan Dragon. Finally he had leveled up again. Mo Shi could feel the surging power in his body. If there was another level 10 super mutated zombie now, it wouldn't be as difficult for him as before. Don't think that it was only one level from level 4 to level 5 Great Hunter. One had to know that the difference between each level of a Great Hunter was extremely huge. A level 5 Great Hunter could easily crush over 100 level 4 Great Hunters. If Mo Shi and the Zombie King were to fight again, the Zombie King wouldn't be able to survive. With his level 5 Great Hunter and level 2 Long Yen Shi, he could directly crush the Zombie King that was 5 levels higher. Mo Shi was so excited that he absorbed the rest of the 9 Zombie King crystal nuclei. He felt that his strength had obviously increased by a lot. If he absorbed another 80 or 90 crystal cores, he should be able to break through. This wasn't difficult. When he signed in tomorrow, wouldn't it be fine if he signed in 100 crystal cores? However, at this moment, the system's voice suddenly rang in Mo Shi's mind. In a short period of time, the crystal cores effect is indeed stronger than the Titan Dragon bloodline modification liquid. However, the crystal core strengthens the entire body and has no effect on the cells. Therefore, the upper limit of the body strengthened by the crystal core is too low. The host's goal is to evolve into a Titan Dragon. If you keep using the crystal core to strengthen your body, you will be far from reaching this goal. System recommendation: it is possible to use the crystal core to strengthen your body once in a while, but you must not use the crystal core to strengthen your body too often. Mo Shi felt a little disappointed. But thinking about it, it made sense. His goal was a Titan Dragon. If he kept using the crystal core to strengthen himself, even if he reached the limit, he would only be a Zombie King. How could a Zombie King compare to a Titan Dragon? Having figured this out, Mo Shi no longer had any regrets in his heart. He checked his evolution points in his mind. He originally had more than 200 million evolution points. After today's battle, he had obtained more than 1.4 billion evolution points. His total evolution points had already reached 1.6 billion. The Zombie King seemed to have come to attack the base. But in reality, it had come to give him evolution points. Mo Shi even imagined a notification in his mind. Your evolution points have been received. Please check. In reality, the system's notification really did appear in his mind. It was just that the content was frowny face evolution points have exceeded 1 billion. The system can be upgraded. Do you wish to upgrade? Mo Shi naturally replied without hesitation, upgrade. Upgrade requires 12 hours. You cannot sign in during the upgrade. The system's notification sounded again. With regards to this, Mo Shi was naturally familiar with it. While the system was upgrading, Mo Shi had nothing to do. Thus he checked the Zombie King's memories. After checking, many of the doubts in Mo Shi's mind were solved. It turned out that the Zombie King was not originally a human. It was also not a zombie that was transformed from a human. Instead, it was an amalgamation of viruses. In other words, it was originally a humanoid virus. In the beginning, this humanoid virus did not have consciousness. However, after infecting too many humans, it seemed to have been influenced by human thinking and gradually formed its own consciousness. Chapter 151. After infecting too many humans, the humanoid virus gained its own consciousness. At the same time, it began to possess humans. However, after it possessed a human, the human would die in a short time. After a long time, it finally found a human with a physique that was almost completely compatible with its virus. This human was naturally Oldly. After finding a suitable host, its strength greatly increased, and it became the king of zombies. After it merged with Oldly's body, Oldly did not die, nor did he become a zombie. When it hid all the virus in Oldly's cells, Oldly looked completely like an ordinary person. Not even a trace of corpse aura would leak out. This was also the reason why Mo Shi's blood demon eyes couldn't detect it. As for the plague dragon's consciousness in its body, it should have been accidentally invaded by the dragon's consciousness when it went to the Brahma's pure mountain. Because of the huge dragon's consciousness in its body, when Mo Shi wanted to activate Oldly to become a psychokinesis, Oldly did not respond. Later, the king of zombies and Oldly had been together for a long time, and its thinking gradually became closer to that of humans. Somehow, it felt that humans would face an extremely severe competition for survival in the future. On today's Earth, the virus mainly relied on humans to survive. If humans were too weak and were directly wiped out, it would not be a good thing for the virus. Therefore, it tried to make humans stronger. In its opinion, there were two ways to make humans stronger. One was to infect humans. After humans were infected, there was a certain chance that they would become super-mutated zombies. The other was to wait for the human laboratory to develop an enhancer. In the King of Zombies' eyes, there was no difference between the two methods. Therefore, after infecting enough humans, it did not kill all the humans in the base. Until now, nearly 30 years had passed, and the enhancer developed by the laboratory could only make humans reach the level of a level 10 hunter. And that was only in theory. Until now, there had not been a real level 10 hunter. This made it very disappointed. Therefore, it planned to mobilize all the zombies to infect all the humans in Wuxia. However, it did not expect Immortality to appear in the middle. In fact, the King of Zombies admired Immortality very much. How could a human be so powerful? If it was able to possess Immortality's body one day, they would definitely be an invincible existence when the two of them joined forces. Unfortunately, they became enemies in the end. At the same time, Immortality learned another thing from the Zombie King's memory. It was not the only king of zombies in the world. Apart from it, there were 7 other zombie kings. They were distributed in other densely populated places around the world. Seeing this, Immortality's heart skipped a beat. Gathering all 7 Dragon Balls would allow one to summon Shinran. It seemed that in the future he would have to go to other places and clean up the other zombie kings. He should be able to obtain quite a number of crystal cores. Although he couldn't absorb crystal nuclei regularly, he could absorb them occasionally. The crystal core was extremely useful. Even if he occasionally absorbed it, it would allow him to level up quickly. But that was all in the future. At the same time, Immortality received a message from the Zombie King's mind. This time, the Zombie King didn't just attack the C1 base. Instead, it ordered all the zombies and human-headed spiders in Wuxia to attack all the bases. Now that this base was saved, the other bases were unable to resist the attack of the large number of zombies. Especially among these zombies, there was a portion of them that were super-mutated zombies. Thinking of this, Immortality's eyes narrowed. In the next moment, his figure disappeared from the spot. In the zombie field, only a 100-meter-tall giant dragon shadow was left. Although he was not a saint, he was not a good person. But if he did not take action, the Wuxia civilization would only have 100,000 people left in the C1 base. In the future, the difficulty of rebuilding the civilization would be greatly increased. Moreover, he estimated that he would obtain at least 3 to 4 billion evolution points. Moreover, the Zombie King had been dealt with. Only a level 8 super-mutated Qinshi Huang zombie was left. Then he could really do whatever he wanted in the entire Wuxia. For him, there was no danger at all. In the C1 base, almost everyone turned their heads and looked at the 100-meter-tall giant dragon shadow. Although it was not the first time they saw the giant dragon shadow. Every time they saw it, their hearts would be shocked. Happy raised his head and looked at the giant dragon shadow. She was the closest, so she could feel the pressure of the giant dragon shadow. Even if it was just a shadow, she did not dare to look directly at it. She could only silently pray for Immortality in her heart. She hoped that Brother Emo could return safely. Immortality covered 10 kilometers with one step. Even the furthest base in the new province only needed to take about 200 steps. In just a moment he had already arrived at the C7 base. At this time, the C7 base had already been surrounded by hundreds of thousands of human-headed spiders. There were also 10,000 strong mutated zombies. Among them there were even 2 super-mutated zombies. In the face of the attack of such a powerful force, the people of the C7 base were filled with despair. The hunter group in their base only had about 7,000 people. Among them, only about 80 people had reached the level of hunter. Psychokinesis only had about 40 people. How could they resist the attack of these zombies and human-headed spiders? In the base, a girl was tightly hugging her father's neck. The father gently stroked the back of his 8-year-old daughter and softly comforted her. "Kola, don't be afraid. We'll be fine." The daughter raised her head and asked in panic, "Dad, really?" The father's eyes were firm as he nodded and said, "Of course." Only then did the daughter feel slightly relieved. However, the father's heart was filled with endless sorrow. In a room in a residential building, a young man tightly hugged his girlfriend next to him. The girl's eyes were filled with tears and her voice trembled slightly. "Little Hai, if there really is an afterlife, I still want to be your girlfriend." The young man closed his eyes in pain. They had just fallen in love, and they had encountered such a great disaster. God, how could you be so cruel? However, in the face of such a disaster, what could he do? He could only hug his girlfriend tightly. After a long time he only said one word, yes. At this time the base chief, who was a level 6 hunter, was standing on the sentry tower. He saw the first high wall being breached with his own eyes. Then he saw the second high wall being breached with his own eyes. Now the infected creatures were attacking the last high wall. He felt a wave of sorrow in his heart. After guarding for almost 30 years, finally he could not hold on any longer. However, as a former soldier, he had the iron-blooded spirit of a soldier in his heart. Even if he had to die, he would die in battle. Seeing that the last high wall was about to be breached, his eyes widened. His eyes were wide open and a few streaks of blood could be seen in his eyes. In his right hand, a genetic weapon condensed. Almost using all the strength he had in his life, he roared out, "Hunter's squad, charge!" The over 8,000 people in the Hunter's squad immediately let out a roar like a wild beast in a desperate fight. They charged towards the infected creatures. Behind them, over 20,000 ordinary soldiers also charged forward. There were even civilians who were holding crowbars, steel pipes, fire axes and electric saws. They all charged forward. All of them were already prepared to die. However, at this moment a sudden change occurred. Chapter 152. Just as everyone was charging forward with the will to die, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, a blood-red spider web fell from the sky. This spider web was like a steel needle as thick as a finger, and it directly nailed into the head of a super mutant zombie. The next moment, it exploded inside the body of the super mutant zombie. Whoosh 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 whoosh, dozens of blood-red spider webs shot out from the body of the super mutant zombie. These blood-red spider webs nailed into the bodies of the other zombies next to it. Dozens of blood-red spider webs also shot out from the bodies of those zombies. Whoosh 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 whoosh, in just a minute. Under such a chain effect, all the infected creatures were pierced by the blood-red spider webs. The blood-red spider webs seemed to have formed a large net around the base. And those infected creatures were like insects stuck in the spider web. Everyone who was charging forward was stunned. Then they stopped. The roars of the infected creatures and the shouts of the people in the base all disappeared at this time. A gust of spring wind blew the leaves around the base. Everyone looked at the sudden huge spider web in horror as if they had seen a ghost. After a long time, someone's Adam's apple wriggled. There was a gulping sound in his throat. What's going on? What is this thing? It killed all the infected creatures. Superpower? Magic? Or mutant? At this time, someone saw the 100-meter-tall dragon shadow 5 kilometers away. Chief, look. When everyone heard this, they all turned their heads to look. Is that a giant dragon? I remember the last time the mysterious strong man appeared, there was such a giant dragon shadow. Right, the last time I was in the wilderness, I saw the mysterious strong man from afar. He stepped 1 kilometer and left such a giant dragon shadow behind him. It's just that the dragon's shadow was only about 10 meters tall and 30 meters long. It was far less shocking than this 100-meter-tall shadow. The chief's eyes flashed. Although the mysterious strong man did not appear, he saved 100,000 people in their base. Everyone in the base should be grateful to the mysterious strong man. Soon the news spread throughout the base. In the base there was a sudden jubilation. They rejoiced at the fact that they had survived a calamity and were excited at the fact that they had avoided another calamity. The father excitedly lifted his daughter high above his head. Kola, we're safe. Everyone is safe. The girl smiled happily. Dad, did the mysterious expert save us? That's right, little Kola. We will remember your kindness for the rest of our lives. In the residential area, the young man and his girlfriend embraced each other tightly. We are still alive, little Hai. You said before that if there was a next life, you would still want to be my girlfriend. Now that we've been reborn, it's already our next life. After saying this, the two of them had tears in their eyes. Love that had experienced life and death was the most sincere and beautiful. After a long time the girl spoke. We should thank the mysterious expert. In the next hour the same thing happened in all the other bases except for C1, C3 and C4. During this hour the words mysterious expert resounded in the hearts of all the survivors in these bases. In base C2, Hao Rin and Jin Shishir held hands tightly. It's Imo. Yes, it's him. In Liaoyuan Temple, the old monk lowered his eyes and put his palms together. He said sincerely, Amitabha. The little monk behind him also put his palms together and said, That's good. At this moment, Imo was not far away from base C3. This was the former capital. There were still hundreds of thousands of infected creatures surrounding Base C3. However, Immortality did not immediately make a move. Because behind those infected creatures, an army of 8,000 people was rushing over at an inhuman speed. These 8,000 people were all wearing black armor and had green faces. There were holes in some parts of their bodies. From the holes, one could see the flesh and blood inside. These were 8,000 terracotta zombies. At the front was a zombie riding a terracotta zombie horse. Black dragon battle robe and black dragon armor. A black dragon helmet and a black face. Zombie Qin Shi Huang. Immortality finally saw this zombie Qin Shi Huang for the first time. He knew that sooner or later he would have to fight this zombie Qin Shi Huang. But he did not expect to meet him so soon. The zombie Qin Shi Huang saw the few super-mutated zombies among the infected creatures. He grabbed the zombie horse's head and let out a roar that was neither human nor zombie. "They are the people of Great Qin, my people. Those who dare to hurt the people of Great Qin will be killed without mercy." Immortality was a little speechless. It seemed that after Qin Shi Huang appeared, he would not be able to jump out of his emperor mindset for a while. It had been almost 2,000 years, and he still wanted to call himself the people of Great Qin. What nonsense was that? However, since Qin Shi Huang wanted to kill these infected creatures, then let's see how strong he was first. When those super-mutated zombies heard Qin Shi Huang's words, they turned their heads. Then they waved at Qin Shi Huang and let out a roar. Roar? The tens of thousands of infected creatures immediately turned around and charged towards Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang waved his hand at the 8,000 terracotta zombies behind him and roared, "Qin Army Arrow Formation, get into formation." Those 8,000 zombie terracotta zombies immediately got into a rectangular formation. It was 100 people long and 80 people wide. Each zombie terracotta took out a bronze crossbow from the buckle on their back. They opened the quiver and took out the arrows and placed them on the crossbow mechanism. When Immortality saw that, he thought to himself, "Qin Army Arrow Formation is famous in the world. Before this I had only heard of it or read about it in books. Today I can finally see it with my own eyes." However, the Qin Army Arrow Formation could deal with normal armies. Would it work against these hundreds of thousands of infected creatures? Very quickly the Qin Army Arrow Formation gave him the answer. Qin Shi Huang raised the bronze sword in his hand. He waited for the infected creatures to enter 1,000 meters. He roared out, "Release the arrows!" Bang! The 8,000 crossbows seemed to have only made a single sound. Shio! The 8,000 crossbow bolts also seemed to emit the same loud sound. In the next moment, the arrows drew a huge arc that spanned close to 1,000 meters in the air. They scattered towards the ground. Poo-pew pew pew pew. A spider with a human head was directly nailed to the ground and did not move. A super-mutated zombie was shot in the left eye by a crossbow arrow and instantly fell to the ground and did not move. 8,000 crossbow bolts covered a wide area. Those infected creatures wanted to hide, but it was too late. What was strange was that even if the arrows only hit the arms and legs of the zombies and did not hit their heads, those zombies would still die in a short period of time. And the self-healing ability of the mutated zombies seemed to be useless under these arrows. Immortality used his dragon sense to investigate and realized that the arrows were infected with the zombie virus. And these zombie viruses, after entering the bodies of the zombies, would quickly kill the X virus in the bodies of the zombies. Of course, in this process the zombie virus on the arrows would also be consumed. The zombie virus was the real reason why these zombies were killed. Chapter 153. The Qin Army's arrow formation was well known. In the past, Immortality had only seen it in books and TV dramas. Today he witnessed the power of the Qin Army's arrow formation. In one round of arrows, over 300 strong mutated zombies were killed. The Qin crossbows were bigger and harder than normal crossbows. Hence, the speed of the arrows was much faster. Even the strong mutated zombies could not avoid the arrows. Once the skin was scratched, the zombie virus on the arrows would enter the zombie's body. After 3 rounds of arrows, close to 1,000 strong mutated zombies were killed. The rest of the mutated zombies did not dare to move forward. The hundreds of thousands of human-headed spiders were probably too stupid. Although many of their companions had died, they still charged forward fearlessly. Although the Qin Army's arrow formation was strong, there were too many human-headed spiders. In the end, a large number of human-headed spiders broke through the arrow formation and arrived 100 meters away from the Qin Army. Immortality originally thought that the human-headed spiders would be able to charge into the Qin Army and fight with the zombie terracotta soldiers. But at this moment, Qin Shi Huang waved his bronze sword. He roared, "Shoot straight." The zombie terracotta soldiers lowered the angle of the arrows. It was almost flying close to the ground. At the same time, the speed at which they shot arrows was much faster than before. These zombie terracotta soldiers were all at least level 5 mutated zombies. Their hand speed was extremely fast. Shooting 2 arrows in a second was not a problem. Also, when they finished shooting the arrows in their quiver, the bones in their hands would grow bone spikes. The bone spikes were as long as the arrows. It looked like a crossbow made of bone. After shooting 1 arrow, another one would grow out of their arms. Hence, they did not have to worry about running out of arrows. As a result, the crossbow bolts formed a dense barrier of death. All the human-headed spiders died quickly after entering this barrier. Mo Shi was secretly shocked. The Qin army's arrow formation was indeed worthy of its reputation. In the distance, the 3 super-mutated zombies looked at each other. Then, the 3 super-mutated zombies suddenly shot out together. They went around the arrow formation with a speed of almost 1,000 meters per second and headed straight for Qin Shi Huang. However, when they pounced in front of Qin First Emperor, the zombie horse under Qin First Emperor suddenly let out a roar. Hiss, oh! Its eyes were blood red. Then he opened his mouth. The horse opened its mouth. The teeth in his mouth were shaped like awls. Under the sunlight, they shone with a cold light. It opened its mouth and bit the arm of a super-mutant zombie. Crack. The arm of the super-mutant zombie was bitten off. The zombie virus quickly infected its entire body. The super-mutant zombie collapsed to the ground. Mo Shi was secretly surprised. He looked over with his blood demon eyes. Race, zombie horse level. Level 5 super-mutated. Damn, Qin Shi Huang's mount is actually a level 5 super-mutated beast. No wonder this zombie horse could easily kill that super-mutated zombie. So that's where the level lies. Seeing this, the remaining 2 super-mutant zombies did not dare to attack from the front. They could only attack Qin Shi Huang from the side. However, when they attacked, Qin Shi Huang did not dodge. It wasn't because it was careless. Instead, it was unnecessary. The bronze sword in its hand suddenly drew a black arc in the air. Swish swish, 2 sounds. The heads of the 2 super-mutant zombies flew up. Qin Shi Huang reached level 8 super-mutated beast. Those 2 zombies were only level 2 super-mutated beasts. In front of Qin Shi Huang they were completely weak. With the death of these 3 super-mutant zombies, the remaining strong mutant zombies were like a group of dragons without a leader. One by one they fled in all directions in fear. At this moment, Qin Shi Huang waved his bronze sword. Kill! The 8,000 Qin soldiers put away their crossbows and took out their bronze swords. They chased after the hundreds of thousands of human-headed spiders and strong mutant zombies. In a short period of time, the hundreds of thousands of human-headed spiders and strong mutant zombies were killed until their blood flowed like a river. They fled in panic. Of course, Mo Shi would not let the remaining human-headed spiders and strong mutant zombies leave. With a move of his dragon mind, he killed all the human-headed spiders and strong mutant zombies. Qin Shi Huang saw that all the infected creatures were suddenly killed and was slightly stunned. He turned his head and looked at Mo Shi from afar. After a moment, he roared and ordered all the zombie soldiers to retreat. Then, his body flashed and disappeared from the spot. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Mo Shi. He sized up Mo Shi a few times, and a hint of puzzlement appeared on his face. I have killed you 9 times. Previously, when Mo Shi's clone entered Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum many times, he killed it instantly. But this time, the hundreds of thousands of infected creatures were instantly killed. He knew that it must be this person's work. Mo Shi nodded. Yes. Qin Shi Huang said again. Warrior, since you have saved the people of the Qin dynasty, your crime of entering the Qin palace can be written off. You should be the first meritorious deed. Then he looked at the blood mist of the infected creatures and said, Today the 4 seas are in turmoil and evil is rampant. Are you willing to follow me on an expedition to the east and to the west, purge the universe, pacify the world, and sweep through the lands? On the day of success, you will be bestowed land and given the title of king. Your name will be recorded in history. You will enjoy endless glory and wealth. Mo Shi could not help but smile. In the past, this Qin Shi Huang was called ambitious. In the present, he was called Chinibyu. He shook his head slightly and did not answer Qin Shi Huang directly. Instead, he pointed in the direction of the base. You plan to turn these humans into zombies like you? Qin Shi Huang turned his head and looked in the direction of the base. You also think that I am a tyrant? Mo Shi said calmly. It's not what I think. That's what the history books say. Burning books and burying Confucians, punishing chariots, not caring about the lives of the people and building the imperial mausoleum. Aren't all these done by you? A green-faced terracotta general at the side shouted angrily. How dare you? As he spoke, he pulled out his bronze sword. Qin Shi Huang waved his hand to stop the green-faced zombie terracotta. General Bai Qi backed down. The green-faced zombie terracotta quickly replied, yes. As he spoke, he sheathed his bronze sword. Emo was stunned. He looked carefully at the green-faced zombie general. He had a strong body and sharp eyebrows. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. This person was Bai Qi? The butcher Bai Qi who claimed to have killed millions of enemies? The Grim Reaper Bai Qi? If he did not remember wrongly, Bai Qi and Qin Shi Huang were not people from the same era. His history teacher once said that Qin Shi Huang was only born 2 years after Bai Qi's death. However, after thinking about it, he understood. Qin Shi Huang relied on the zombie virus to revive. Maybe they used some method to preserve Bai Qi's corpse. Qin Shi Huang might have used the zombie virus to revive Bai Qi. At this moment, Qin Shi Huang laughed coldly and looked at the sky. So, this is how the people of the future evaluated me. He then shook his head and did not dwell on this matter. Instead he said, the demon Su Fu bewitched me. I ordered him to go overseas to search for the celestial medicine. He did not find the celestial medicine and said that the terracotta technique could allow me to live forever. He turned me and my 8,000 soldiers into something that is neither human nor ghost. Now, my great Qin is dying and there are many things waiting to be done. How can I let the people suffer like this? When Emo heard this, he understood. Qin Shi Huang did not intend to kill these humans or infect them into zombies. His goal was to rule these humans. Thinking of this, Emo dispelled the idea of killing Qin Shi Huang. Because after settling this matter, he planned to sign in at Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. According to the historical records, there were countless mechanisms in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. It was too risky to go there rashly. If he had a good relationship with Qin Shi Huang now, wouldn't it be easy for him to sign in at Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum? Thinking of this, Emo said to Qin Shi Huang, it's good that you don't kill these people. It's not convenient today. I'll visit the Qin Palace another day. Goodbye. After he finished speaking, his figure moved and he disappeared. Only 100-meter-tall dragon shadow was left on the spot. Qin Shi Huang looked at the dragon shadow and pondered for a moment. Could this person be an ancient divine beast or a ferocious beast in human form? No wonder he wasn't afraid when he saw me. The green-faced zombie general beside him roared, Your Majesty is the true dragon, the son of heaven. Even divine beasts or ferocious beasts should submit to your majesty. Qin Shi Huang looked in the direction where Emo disappeared. The gaze in his eyes gradually became sharp. All the land in the world belongs to the king. All the land is the king's subject. One day he will also submit to me. A moment later, Emo dragon shadow slowly disappeared. Only then did Qin Shi Huang wave his hand at the Qin zombies and let out a half-human half-beast roar. Return to the palace. Chapter 154. When Qin Shi Huang left with the 8,000 zombies, Qin Shi Huang was shocked. Below the walls of the base, the humans were prepared to fight to the death. But now they were all confused. How did the zombies fight with the zombies? Why did they leave? What's up with that giant dragon shadow? Oh right, I've seen this giant dragon shadow before. It should be a mysterious powerhouse. One of the hunters suddenly spoke. The other hunters also nodded. That's right, it's exactly the same as the giant dragon shadow. It's just much bigger than the previous one. They didn't know that what they saw before was only Emo clone. Emo clone only had the strength of a level 10 hunter. So when he used the dragon shadow step, he could only leave a 10-meter-tall shadow. At this time, Emo was rushing to Xan province while using the flesh of the infected creatures he killed along the way to create 10 clones. He was now a level 5 great hunter and a level 2 long Nian Shi. The strength of the clones he created had greatly increased. Each of them was a level 1 great hunter and a level 1 psychic. It could be said that even his clones could do whatever they wanted in Wuxia. Of course, the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang was an exception. After creating the 10 clones, Emo sent them to various parts of Wuxia to hunt down the remaining zombies. The king of zombies was dead. As long as the remaining zombies were wiped out, the whole of Wuxia would be at peace. As for Emo main body, he was rushing to Xan province as fast as he could. He had 2 goals for this trip. The first was to solve the siege of Xan Province's base C4. The second was to check in at Xan Province's dragon ruins. Lil, Dragon Shadow Step, 10 kilometers per second. In less than 5 minutes, he had already arrived at the periphery of Xan Province's base C4. At this time, the 3 walls of base C4 had been breached. The hunter group was fighting with the 20,000-strong mutated zombies. The ordinary soldiers were trying their best to resist the attacks of the human-headed spiders. Although they all knew that today was definitely the end. Every soldier and hunter group member was fighting with all their might. Although the end was already decided, it was impossible for them to just sit and wait for death. Everyone roared like wild beasts and attacked the infected creatures. At this moment, everyone in the base was filled with despair. Today was the end of base C4. But at this moment, bang 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 bang, continuous muffled sounds came from the infected creatures' bodies. Then the infected creatures exploded into a bloody mist. Whether it was the human-headed spiders or the strong mutant zombies, none of them were spared. Even those super mutant zombies directly exploded into blood mist. After Mosher's draconic sense was upgraded to level 2, he could kill any super mutant creature below level 4 with just his draconic sense alone. In the base, the despairing humans were all stunned. What's going on? The infected creatures all exploded. The members of the hunting groups and the ordinary soldiers who were fighting thought that they would die today. He didn't expect these infected creatures to suddenly explode. While they were pleasantly surprised, they were also filled with doubt. What was going on? Could it be that the heavens had opened their eyes? Just as they were puzzled, a figure slowly walked out from the blood mist that filled the sky. At first, they could only see the silhouette of a person. Gradually, the silhouette became clearer. When the figure got closer, they finally saw the person clearly. He seemed to be in his 20s. There seemed to be no emotion in his cold eyes. It's him, he killed those infected creatures. So, he must be a psychokinesis user? Psychokinesis for sure. Otherwise, how could he do this? But even a level 10 psychokinesis user might not be able to do this, right? Amidst everyone's discussion, Mosher came to the front of the crowd and slowly stopped in his tracks. The leader of the base had also rushed over. He sized up Mosher, then nodded to Mosher. On behalf of more than 80,000 people in the base, thank you. Mosher just nodded slightly. He didn't expect these humans to be grateful. He just wanted the entire human civilization to continue. As for whether these people would be grateful to him or harm him by repaying his evil with good, he didn't care. Being grateful to him, he didn't expect to get any benefits from them. With the sign-in system, he didn't lack good things. He didn't care about the benefits they gave him. As for those who wanted to harm him with good for evil, he would just slap them to death. He looked at the leader of the base and moved his mind. A map appeared in his hand. When the surrounding people saw this, they exclaimed again. A map appeared out of thin air. What kind of method was this? Mosher handed the map to the leader of the base and slowly said, "Does anyone in your base recognize this place?" The leader took the map and looked at it. He didn't recognize it. The map was a little blurry, and the names of the mountains and rivers weren't clearly marked. He handed the map to the others next to him. After reading it, those people also shook their heads. Seeing a trace of disappointment in Mosher's eyes, the bureau chief hurriedly said, "But among the 80,000 people in our base, there are bound to be some who recognize it. If you don't mind, I'll pass this map down. There should be people who recognize it soon." The young man in front of them helped their base deal with hundreds of thousands of infected creatures. If they couldn't even help with such a small matter, it would be too unreasonable. Mosher wasn't in a hurry. Anyway, the system hadn't finished upgrading yet. He planned to go to the next dragon ruins to sign in after the system was upgraded. That night, Mosher stayed at base C4. The leader of the base ordered everyone not to disturb the young man if there was no reason. He was thinking that the young man's strength was so heaven-defying that it might have far surpassed level 10 psychokinesis. If their base could gain the young man's favor now and make him stay at base C4, then wouldn't base C4 no longer be afraid of infected creatures? That night, Mosher was arranged to stay in the best building in the base. At night, Mosher lay on the bed and checked his evolution points in his mind. He found that his evolution points had unknowingly exceeded 6 billion. The next upgrade wasn't far away. The next morning, Mosher woke up and walked out of his room. The sun was shining brightly, and the warm wind carried the fragrance of flowers. There was a peach tree in the courtyard where he lived, and the peach blossoms had already bloomed. Mosher couldn't help but be in a good mood. He sighed in his heart. Spring returns to the earth and all things recover. It's time again. Forget it, it's not suitable for children. At the same time, the system in Emosher's mind showed that the upgrade had been completed in the early morning. Emosher was delighted. He shifted his attention to his mind. Upgrade complete. Upgrade reward, Blood Demon's Eye upgrade. Upgrade reward, Virtual Sentry Tower upgrade. Upgrade reward, Invincible Diamond Body. Emosher checked the rewards in his mind. Blood Demon's Eye upgraded to Blood Dragon's Eye. Blood Dragon's Eye can detect corpse energy. Can observe the target's race and level. Can see the target's essence through the target's appearance. Compared to Blood Demon's Eye, Blood Dragon's Eye had an additional function. See the target's essence through the target's appearance. If there was a zombie king hiding in a human's body, Emosher's Blood Dragon's Eye would be able to recognize it at a glance. Chapter 155. The Eye of the Blood Demon had been upgraded to the Eye of the Blood Dragon. He could see the essence of the target through the surface. Emosher nodded slightly. This function was quite good. Then he looked at the upgraded Virtual Sentry Tower. Virtual Sentry Tower function. 1. Alert. Any danger within a radius of 100 kilometers will be alerted. 2. Interference. The Virtual Sentry Tower can release interference waves to interfere with the enemy's vision. Emosher nodded slightly when he saw this. This function was very powerful. In the future, if an enemy appeared within 100 kilometers, he would be able to predict it in advance. The only pity was that it couldn't detect the danger of the form of psychic power. For example, he couldn't detect the Plague Dragon's dragon will before. But it wasn't a big problem. Other psychic powers were far inferior to his dragon will. Only other draconic wills could be stronger than his draconic will. But his dragon will could perfectly restrain other dragon will. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about any other attacks on his dragon will. As for the invincible Vajra body, it was just icing on the cake. With the Blood Dragon armor and the Titan Dragon breastplate, he already had 2 layers of defense that no attack on Earth could break through. Now, with the invincible Vajra body, his defense could be said to be invincible. The previous king of zombies was afraid of Chi Nu, but Emosher had 3 layers of strong defense. The creatures on Earth that could kill him probably hadn't been born yet. Emosher took a few deep breaths. There was a relaxed smile on his face. Now, in the entire Wuxia, with his strength that could crush a level 10 mutated zombie, coupled with his invincible defense, he could finally be unstoppable in the true sense. Then, a system notification sounded in his mind. Frowny face. Content of this upgrade. Sign and reward plus 1000 times mechanism. Just like the previous upgrade, there was only one. But just this one was already very heaven-defying. Originally, after Emosher reached level 5, it would take at least half a year before he could level up again. But now that there was a reward of 1000 times, he would be able to level up again after signing in for 4 or 5 days at most. Emosher had a question in his heart. System, with the upgrade of the system, can you increase the reward infinitely? The system replied. Frowny face. No, at most it can be increased to 10,000 times. Emosher saw that the system had responded to him, so he hurriedly asked, what about after 10,000 times? Wouldn't his leveling speed slow down again? 1 level in half a year and then 1 level in 3 to 5 years? Of course, when Emosher said it was slow, it was relative to before. If other people knew that he thought it was too slow to level up once in half a year, and that he thought it was too slow to level up once in 3 to 5 years, they would probably want to kill him. It took many years for the others to level up after they became hunters. You're already a great hunter. You'll be able to level up in 3 to 5 years and you think that's too slow? The system replied. If you want to evolve into a Titan dragon, you must first stabilize your foundation. And the stability of the foundation requires a long-term process. Emosher was a little speechless. Does that mean we can only slowly improve in the future? The system replied, of course, we can't rule out the possibility of some special opportunities that allow the host to level up quickly without affecting the stability of his foundation. Hearing this, Emosher asked, can you be more specific? However, the system did not reply. However, Emosher finally breathed a sigh of relief. It was good to have hope. At this time, the base chief had already ordered breakfast to be served. 1 fried egg with leeks, 1 fried potato, 5 pancakes and a bowl of pumpkin millet porridge. In his previous life, this was a common meal. However, in the current apocalypse, especially in base C4, which had just been attacked by a large number of infected creatures, this was considered the most sumptuous breakfast. In the entire base C4, only Emosher could eat breakfast like this. Even the base chief was just a dish, a bowl of porridge. Emoshir had not eaten such a common meal for a long time. He swept all the dishes clean like a whirlwind. As soon as he finished eating, the base chief brought in an old man. This was an old man who was over 70 years old. The base chief introduced him to Emoshir. Before the apocalypse, Uncle Chi specialized in mapping in Xan province. He was very familiar with the terrain of Xan province. He could tell what the mountains and rivers were at a glance. Emoshir nodded at Uncle Chi as a form of greeting. Of course, Uncle Chi was very grateful to Emoshir. Yesterday, when the infected creatures attacked, it was not a big deal for him to die. However, his grandson was just born 2 days ago. How could he bear to see a 2-day-old child be destroyed along with the base? It was all thanks to this Mr. Emo who saved the base and their family. He took out Emoshir's map and a neatly folded piece of white paper. He opened the white paper and saw a hand-drawn map. The terrain on the map was almost the same as Emoshir's map. However, it was more detailed than the ancient map that Emoshir had. Not only were the names of the mountains and rivers marked, but the length of the rivers and the height of the mountains were also clearly marked. The base chief said, "Mr. Emo, you saved the entire base yesterday. Uncle Chi is grateful to you, so he hand-drew this map overnight." Emoshir nodded at Uncle Chi to express his gratitude. Then he carefully looked at the new hand-drawn map. According to this new map, he could clearly see that the location of the dragon ruins was called Lake Kanas. This reminded Emoshir of the legend of the Lake Kanas monster that he had read in his previous life. It was said that huge monsters often appeared in Lake Kanas and dragged the horses on the shore into the lake. There were even a few people who took photos of the huge shadow of the monster under the lake. Now, the location of the dragon ruins on the map was directly marked on Lake Kanas. Emoshir thought to himself that the dragon ruins should be in Lake Kanas. Uncle Chi said to Emoshir again, "If you want to go to Lake Kanas, I suggest that you go in 2 months. It starts snowing there in August every year and lasts until May of the next year. The snow hasn't melted yet." Emoshir nodded to show that he understood. However, with his strength, this bit of snow was nothing. He stayed at base C4 for 4 days. At 11 o'clock at night on the 4th day, he signed in 1,000 drops of enhancer. After taking it, he broke through to level 6. Name, Emoshir. Level 6 Great Hunter. Level 2 Long Yenshir. Evolution Path, Titan Dragon. Emoshir looked at the attribute interface in his mind and was secretly happy. The reason why he stayed at base C4 for these few days was to wait for his level to increase. Since his level had increased, he planned to leave base C4 the next morning after breakfast. The base chief and the leader of the hunting group had originally come to talk to Emoshir about something. But when they saw that Emoshir was about to leave, they couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. "Mr. Emo, are you leaving now?" Emoshir knew what they were thinking and said, Don't worry, no infected creatures will attack base C4 in the future." After saying that, he didn't say another word. He turned around and walked out of the base. Chapter 156. The chief of base C4 and the leader of the hunters looked at Emoshir's back as he left. They pondered over Emoshir's words. After a while, the leader of the hunters asked in surprise. "Mr. Emo said that there will be no more infected creatures attacking the base. What does that mean?" Of course, he knew the literal meaning of that sentence. But there was one point that he could not understand. The fact that the infected creatures would not attack the base meant that they were either afraid of Mr. Emo, or they were all wiped out by Mr. Emo. In their opinion, the possibility of them being afraid of him was very small. The infected creatures were all bloodthirsty and cruel. What was there to be afraid of? Did that mean that they were all wiped out by Mr. Emo? How many infected creatures were there in the vicinity of base C4, and they were all wiped out by Mr. Emo just like that? The chief of the base pondered for a moment, and his eyes lit up as he turned to the leader of the hunters. Leader Korban immediately organized the hunters and psychokinesis to scout out the situation within 50 kilometers of the base. Korban nodded. "Yes, chief." In the afternoon, Korban came to report to the chief. "We have scouted 50 kilometers of the base and did not find any traces of infected creatures. We plan to scout further tomorrow." The chief was delighted. "Sure, but be careful when you scout." The 3rd day, the 4th day, they scouted further and further. In the end, they found that there were no infected creatures within 300 kilometers of the base. When the news reached the base, the entire base was in an uproar. It had been 30 years since Virus X swept across the world. In these 30 years, the area around the base was a death zone. Other than the powerful hunters and psychokinesis who could occasionally go out, no one else had left the base. People under the age of 30 had never set foot on the land outside the base. Although they sometimes dreamed of the day when the infected creatures would be wiped out, and human civilization could be restored. But it was just a dream. The world situation was getting worse, and the infected creatures were getting stronger at a faster rate. Whether they could live until tomorrow was a question. How could they set foot on the land outside? But now that Mr. Emo had appeared, all the infected creatures within 300 kilometers of the base had been wiped out. And this was only the area they scouted. Perhaps the infected creatures outside their range had also been wiped out. This made them see the hope of human civilization being restored for the first time. She really didn't know how Mr. Emo did it. At the same time, everyone was filled with respect for Mr. Emo. Mr. Mo's strength was actually so powerful. This was completely beyond their understanding. After Emo Sure left base C4, he headed towards Lake Kanas. With his speed, it would take him less than a minute to cover a distance of 400 kilometers. At this time he had already arrived at the top of the mountain beside Lake Kanas. It was snowing heavily. However, the blood that fell to the ground was not white. Instead it was red. It was as red as blood. Looking down from here, the entire Kanas Lake was about 20 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. It was shaped like a giant worm. However, Emo Sure could not see the surface of the lake at all. This was because the entire surface of Lake Kanas was covered by giant sarcomas with a diameter of more than 5 meters. The surface of the tumor was covered with thick black blood vessels. Every sarcoma was like a human heart, beating rhythmically. This made Lake Kanas look like a giant blood-red worm. Around the lake, Sanguisurincus radiated in all directions. All the nearby mountains were covered with blood-red vines. Even the knowledgeable Emo Sure could not help but frown slightly when he saw this scene. The entire Lake Kanas, which was more than 20 square kilometers, had become a mother nest. This was the largest mother nest he had ever seen. One could imagine how strong the creatures in this mother nest were. His black pupils gradually turned blood-red. The blood dragon's eye was activated. He looked at the mother nest. In the past, the blood demon's eye could not see inside the mother nest. However, after the upgrade, the blood dragon's eye could see through the surface and see the essence. It could easily see through the sarcomas on the mother nest and see the situation inside the mother nest. He saw that Lake Kanas was inside the mother nest. However, the water of Lake Kanas was no longer blue or dark green. It was blood red. The blood pool that he had seen in other mother nests in the past had expanded into a blood lake here. A huge blood lake of more than 20 square kilometers. Just one look was enough to make one's hair stand on end. However, in the blood pool there was no sign of the infected creature. He directly opened the mother nest's consciousness. He connected to the huge mother nest's consciousness. From the mother nest's consciousness, he saw the huge creature in the mother nest. It was a huge creature that was more than 300 meters long and had a thin and long body. Species, mutant Mosasaurus. Level 2 super mutant. Emo Sure knew that the Mosasaurus did exist during the dinosaur era. It was a large predator in the sea. However, it was said to be extinct in the past. Now it seemed that not only was it not extinct, but it had always existed. The so-called Kanas water monster was actually this Mosasaurus. In the past, when Emo Sure connected to the mother nest's consciousness to search for super mutant creatures, he did not find this mutant Mosasaurus. It seemed that it had only become a level 2 super mutant beast recently. It seemed that the larger the blood pool in the mother nest, the faster the strength of the infected creature would increase. Unfortunately, no matter how fast it increased, it would not be as fast as Emo Sure's strength. His dragon thought moved. Bang! All the huge sarcomas on the surface of the lake that was more than 20 square kilometers exploded at the same time. Imagine, thousands of huge sarcomas exploding at the same time. How spectacular would that scene be? In the blood-red snowflakes that filled the sky, the sarcomas burst into blood-red waves that filled the sky. It was like 10,000 horses galloping and 10,000 corpses roaring. The momentum was terrifying. Then the blood-red waves that filled the sky fell into the blood lake below. The surface of the lake that was more than 20 square kilometers rose by more than half a meter. At the same time, thousands of blood-red tentacles quickly crawled out of the blood lake. These blood-red tentacles crawled to the side of the lake and directly stood up out of thin air. They formed something that looked like blood vessels. Then, on these blood vessels, sarcomas began to grow again. The blood lake was actually rebuilding the mother nest on its own. The speed of rebuilding was extremely fast. At this speed, it would probably take less than 10 minutes for the entire huge mother nest to be completely repaired. At the same time, the ground under Emo Sure's feet suddenly shook. His feet tapped lightly. His whole body bounced up into the air. The moment he bounced up, the mountain peak he was standing on just now collapsed with a loud bang. Huge mountain rocks were scattered in all directions. They smashed into the trees at the foot of the mountain, causing them to snap continuously. Huge rocks rolled down the mountain, causing red snow to fill the sky. From the crack of the mountain peak, a huge Sanguisurincus with a diameter of more than 50 meters jumped out. Then, on this huge Sanguisurincus, thousands of Sanguisurincus with a diameter of more than a meter grew out. It looked like the blood-red roots of a huge tree had extended out of the ground and were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws in the air. It was like a huge blood tree monster that attacked Immortality. Chapter 157. The Sanguisurincus was now more than 300 meters tall. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it attacked Immortality. The blood dragon wings on Immortality's back quickly spread out. The long way was released from his body. Roar. The moment the long way was released, there seemed to be a faint dragon's roar that spread in all directions. If one listened carefully, it seemed that there was no dragon's roar at all. But all the infected creatures within a 50-kilometer radius trembled when they heard the dragon's roar. Under the blood lake of Kanas, there was a huge crack at a depth of nearly 200 meters. Under this crack, there was a natural cave that was even deeper than Lake Kanas. In this cave, a 350-meter-long creature was sleeping. But at this moment, when it heard the dragon's roar, its eyelids suddenly opened. The next moment, it swung its huge tail and quickly passed through the crack, swimming towards the surface of the lake. At this moment, the huge Sanguisurincus, which was pouncing towards Immortality, suddenly stopped in its tracks when it heard the dragon's roar. It was also at this moment that Immortality's dragon consciousness trembled slightly. Boom 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 boom. The 300-meter-tall Sanguisurincus slowly exploded from top to bottom. Like a building in an earthquake, it collapsed with a loud bang. However, at this moment the second mountain trembled and collapsed as well. Then the third, the fourth, all the mountains near Lake Kanas collapsed with a loud bang. Within a 50-kilometer radius, the sky was suddenly filled with red snow. It was like a snow-colored tsunami that kept rushing in all directions. From every collapsed mountain, a 50-meter-thick Sanguisurincus stretched out. Dozens of Sanguisurincus stretched into the sky and grew thousands of branches. It actually covered an area of more than 80 kilometers around Lake Kanas. And Immortality was covered in it. It seemed that Immortality had nowhere to run. However, he didn't care about the Sanguisurincus that were charging at him. Instead, he lowered his head to look at the mother nest, which had already been rebuilt by a 10th. The mother nest was the source of energy for these Sanguisurincus. As long as the mother nest wasn't destroyed, more Sanguisurincus would be born. The method to destroy the mother nest was simple. 10 psychokinesis meteorites falling down could easily do that. But when Immortality connected to the broodmother's consciousness, he saw a crack at the bottom of the blood lake. He guessed that the dragon ruins were below the crack. If it was bombarded with telekinesis meteorites, the entrance to the dragon ruins below might collapse. At that time it would be very troublesome to enter again. Looks like I can only use that. Thinking of this, Immortality's mind moved. A small virus had already appeared in the palm of his right hand. This was the Virus 0 that Immortality had obtained from signing in before. According to the system, this was a super powerful virus that could easily wipe out a country. Of course, the virus couldn't be seen with the naked eye. But Immortality could see it with the blood dragon's eye. This small virus was actually emitting a corpse aura that reached the sky. As soon as this virus appeared, within a radius of 100 kilometers, it was enveloped in blood-red corpse aura in an extremely short period of time. The corpse aura was 100 times denser than the corpse aura in Emperor Qin's mausoleum. Even without using the blood dragon's eye, he could easily see this shocking corpse aura. Immortality couldn't help but reveal a trace of shock on his face. The corpse aura of a small virus was actually so terrifying. However, when Immortality injected a trace of his dragon's will into the Virus 0, the surrounding corpse aura instantly disappeared. To be exact, it didn't disappear. Instead, under the control of Immortality's dragon's will, all the corpse aura was retracted into the Virus 0. Then his dragon's will moved. This small virus flew towards the blood lake below. If others were present, they wouldn't be able to see what Immortality did. Even a psychic master wouldn't be able to detect a small virus. But only Immortality knew that this was definitely a time bomb more terrifying than a nuclear bomb. Soon, the Virus 0 disappeared into the lake water. At this moment, the Virus 0 was still in a dormant state. Immortality's dragon's will moved, and the dragon's will in the Virus Zero immediately surged. The Virus Zero was instantly activated. The next moment, the Virus Zero directly invaded the Virus X next to it. It instantly swallowed the Virus X and transformed it into the Virus Zero. Then this Virus Zero, which was one size bigger, split into two. These two Virus Zeros then devoured the other two Virus X's nearby, and then became 4. Then 4 turned into 8, 8 turned into 16, 16 turned into 32. In the end, it turned into tens of millions of Virus Zero. At the same time, Mosher's dragons will also replicated tens of millions of Virus X's will. Within each virus there was a weak dragon's will. And if he could control these dragons' wills, he could also control these Virus Zero. With a thought, the Virus Zero could stop spreading. With another thought, all the Virus Zero could instantly die. At this moment, from a macroscopic point of view, the center of the blood lake turned purplish-black in a very short period of time. Then this purplish-black quickly spread to the surroundings. In just a few seconds the entire blood lake turned purplish-black. At the same time, the sanguisurincus around the blood lake were also quickly dyed purplish-black. On all the surrounding mountains, the 50-meter thick sanguisurincus were also instantly dyed purplish-black. The sanguisurincus that covered a radius of tens of kilometers were all dyed purplish-black in just a few seconds and turned into wisteria. The sanguisurincus that attacked Mosher earlier were all frozen in midair. They were motionless. At the same time, around the blood lake, all the animals and plants within a 50-kilometer radius turned purplish-black. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it happened in just a few seconds. All the viruses in the infected bodies within a 50-kilometer radius were swallowed by the Virus Zero. However, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. After completing the initial shockwave-like spread, the Virus Zero seemed to have weakened. However, it didn't. Although it slowed down, it continued to spread outwards. Gradually, 60 kilometers, 70 kilometers, 80 kilometers. The Zero virus only stopped spreading after it had spread to a radius of 100 kilometers. But was it over? It was still not over. Although the Virus Zero was no longer spreading on its own. But within a radius of 100 kilometers, how many animals were infected with the Virus Zero? They would move around and walk out of this 100-kilometer radius. They would continue to spread the Virus Zero to other places around. Moreover, the Virus Zero was extremely infectious. It could be transmitted through blood. It could be transmitted through water sources. It could be transmitted through skin contact. The most terrifying thing was that it could be transmitted through the air. In a situation where one was unprepared, there was no way to avoid it. If this Virus Zero was released when a country was not on guard, the country would not be able to survive. One could imagine that this country would have almost no chance of resisting. Establish an isolation zone? Develop a vaccine? Please, the Virus Zero wouldn't give you the time at all. When Mosher sensed this, he couldn't help but change his expression. The Virus Zero was even more terrifying than this. Chapter 158. Feeling the power of the Zero virus, Mosher couldn't help but be shocked. The power of the Zero virus was actually so terrifying. At the same time, in Lake Kaunas, which had been completely infected by the Zero virus, the huge mutated mosasaur, which was more than 300 meters long, was swimming towards the lake. Its body had also been completely infected with the Zero virus. At first, its skin turned purplish-black. Then, the purplish-black color invaded its body. All its blood vessels, muscles, bones, and internal organs turned purplish-black. But at this time it didn't feel any pain. It felt the dragon's roar from before and was extremely excited. It quickly swam towards the lake. However, at this moment, Mosher's dragon will moved. Boom. Within a radius of 100 kilometers. All the animals and plants collapsed like sand sculptures. All the sanguisurincus that enveloped Mosher also collapsed like grains of sand. All the surrounding trees that had turned purplish-black also turned into powder and collapsed. All the creatures within this range turned into purplish-black powder. Even the microscopic bacteria and viruses were completely dead at this moment. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, except for Mosher, there was no other life. Looking down from above, only a huge purplish-black circle with a radius of 100 kilometers could be seen covering the ground. The mosasaur in Lake Kaunas also turned into purplish-black powder at this time and floated to the surface of the lake. The surprise in Mosher's heart couldn't help but increase a little. The power of the Zero virus was far beyond his imagination. Its lethality was definitely much more terrifying than a nuclear bomb. Within the killing range, even bacteria couldn't survive. In the future, this zero virus would be his ultimate killing weapon. At this time, Immortality landed on the edge of Lake Kanas, which had turned purplish-black. Looking at the purplish-black lake, he was a little worried. The dragon ruins was more than 100 meters deep at the bottom of the lake. How should he go down? Forget it, let's sign in first. Let's see what I can sign out. System, sign in. Immortality said in his mind. The system's voice quickly came, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, virus hive. Sign in reward, Mosasaur clone, evolution by devouring. Immortality looked at the skill description in his mind. A moment later he was secretly delighted. This sea dragon clone was very different from the virus clone from before. Sea dragon clone. The host can use the infected body to condense a sea dragon clone. The sea dragon clone contains a strain of virus 0. The host's consciousness can switch between the main body and the sea dragon clone at will. The sea dragon clone carrying the 0 virus was definitely a ticking time bomb. Furthermore, his consciousness could switch back and forth between the sea dragon clone and his main body. In other words, as long as there was a sea dragon clone, then, even if his original body was killed, his consciousness could still exist in the sea dragon clone. This was a function that the previous virus clones did not possess. Immortality had previously thought that if he killed all the infected creatures on land, he would no longer have a source of evolution points and would have to go to the ocean. After all, the ocean was much larger than the land. Naturally, the number of infected creatures in the ocean was much higher than the number of infected creatures on land. Now that he had the sea dragon clone, it would be much more convenient to hunt infected creatures in the ocean. As for the Devour Evolve skill, it was not meant for Immortality's main body. It was meant for the sea dragon clone. Devour Evolve. The sea dragon clone can evolve by devouring infected creatures. The highest level of evolution will not exceed the host by 1 realm. The evolution points obtained by the sea dragon clone devouring infected creatures will belong to the host. After reading the skill introduction, Immortality couldn't help but feel a little excited. When the sea dragon clone evolved to the limit, it could at most be 1 realm higher than him. He was now a level 6 great hunter. How strong would it be to be 1 realm higher than him? Immortality couldn't help but be fascinated and asked expectantly, System, 1 realm higher than a great hunter, what realm is that? Spirit hunting? Then hunting king, hunting emperor, and hunting grandmaster? And finally hunting through the heavens? The system did not respond. Immortality shook his head and sighed. You really had no temper when chatting with a system that would suddenly dive into the water at the drop of a hat. At this moment, Immortality's dragon thoughts moved. The purple-black sea dragon powder floating in the lake began to slowly squirm. The powder condensed into a purple-black sanguisurincus. On top of the sanguisurincus, hundreds and thousands of tiny sanguisurincus grew. These sanguisurincus condensed into all the blood vessels in the sea dragon's body. Then on top of the blood vessels, muscles, bones, and internal organs began to slowly grow. 5 minutes later, a sea dragon finally condensed and took shape. It looked exactly the same as the sea dragon from before. It's just that its size, it was only 1 inch long. He looked at it with the blood dragon's eye. Species, sea dragon. Level, ordinary mutant beast. Ability, Devour Evolve. Immortality suddenly felt like cursing Brother Knife. System, you call this a sea dragon? It's not even as long as my little bug, okay? It's only this long and you want to devour it and evolve it? Who do you want it to devour? You should be thanking the heavens if you don't get devoured, okay? Even someone like Immortality, who usually didn't talk much, had a rare outburst of complaints. However, the system was still silent. Immortality sighed again. He really didn't have a temper with this kind of diving dog. With a thought, he took out the dragon's cave. His main body entered the dragon's cave, and the dragon's cave instantly disappeared. And his consciousness switched to the sea dragon's body. In this way, while his consciousness was in the sea dragon's body, his main body could still cultivate long way in the dragon's cave. And he didn't have to worry about his main body being ambushed. 3 birds with 1 stone. At this moment, Immortality's main body in the dragon's cave was only a shell left. His consciousness controlled the sea dragon to swim under the surface of the lake. Speaking of which, turning into a sea dragon really felt a bit strange. This feeling was completely different from observing the world through the perspective of his virus clone. The body of the virus clone was its own attribute. And now Immortality felt that this sea dragon was himself, and he was the sea dragon. I am in you and you are in me. He controlled the sea dragon clone with his mind and dived more than 100 meters. He came to the crack at the bottom of the lake. According to Emoshir's personality in the past, he would have used his dragon consciousness to investigate first, and then set up a virtual sentry tower. Finally, he would use the virus clone to investigate. But now that he had the sea dragon clone, there was no need to go through so much trouble. Anyway, even if the sea dragon clone died, his consciousness could be switched back to his main body. He himself wouldn't be affected in any way. He controlled the sea dragon clone and swam into the dragon's cave below. His dragon consciousness probed the surroundings. He saw that there was a different world under this crack. It was the size of several football fields. Emoshir had been looking forward to finding some treasures in the dragon ruins. But how could there be so many treasures to find? The draconic ruins was still empty. It wasn't even as good as the previous 2 dragon ruins. In those 2 dragon ruins, there were at least dragon claw marks and dragon bones. There wasn't even a dragon's fart here. But Emoshir wasn't disappointed. With the sign-in system, even if there were no treasures, he could sign them out in minutes. System, sign in. Emoshir said in his mind. Chapter 159. Although he had already signed in there just now. But this was a special place where he could sign in twice in a row. Emoshir said in his mind, System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded in his mind, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, Dragon Ruins, sign in reward, Black Ice Dragon Breath, sign in reward, Basic Demon Binding Rope, sign in reward, Basic Black Ice Demon Slaying Blade. The Black Ice Dragon Breath was a skill. The Black Ice Dragon Breath that it spat out could freeze 100 miles. Sounded awesome. But this Black Ice Dragon Breath was the same as the Red Flame Dragon Breath. It required energy to activate. Emoshir didn't have much energy apart from the little energy he obtained from the Plague Dragon's Dragon Will. This was also the reason why he hadn't used the Red Flame Dragon Breath until now. The Demon Binding Rope was also a skill. It used the Dragon Will to control the flesh and blood of the infected creature and condensed a blood-red chain. It could bind any infected creature for a short period of time, regardless of level. Of course, the higher the level of the infected creature, the shorter the effect of the Demon Binding Rope. Currently, Emoshir already had 2 items that ignored level. One was the Titan Dragon Scale. It could ignore the opponent's level and perform a defense. The other was this basic Demon Binding Rope. It ignored the opponent's level and performed a binding. Something that ignored the opponent's level was the most heaven-defying thing. Finally, Emoshir looked at the Black Ice Demon Slaying Blade. It looked even cooler than the Bloodthirsty Corpse Slaying Blade. It was blood red. It was so red that it seemed like blood could drip out. From the tip of the blade to the hilt, it had a small S-shaped shape. The tip of the blade was extremely sharp. There was an S-shaped hollow line on the blade that stuck to the blade and extended from the tip of the blade to the hilt. On the back of the blade there were more than 10 sawteeth. Overall, it looked full of technological and mysterious. The functions of the Black Ice Demon Slaying Blade and the Bloodthirsty Corpse Slaying Blade were somewhat similar. They could both absorb the blood of infected creatures and transform it into strong acids. However, the Black Ice Demon Slaying Blade had an additional, ice sealing function. When it hit anything, it could instantly release a large amount of ice energy. It would cause an ice sealing effect. Even if it encountered a powerful mutated beast, it couldn't be directly frozen, but it could cause a reduction effect. In this way they would corrode from the inside and freeze from the outside. It would catch the enemy off guard. Moreover, the Mystic Ice Devil Slayer Blade had a growth attribute. It would absorb the host's evolution points and slowly grow. Emoshir took a closer look at the weapon description. He discovered that it only needed to absorb 100 evolution points every day. For the wealthy Emoshir, this was not a problem at all. It must be known that he had more than 6 billion evolution points. Moreover, the Zero virus had killed so many infected creatures. His evolution points were nearing 7 billion. A mere 100 evolution points was nothing. After signing in, Emoshir once again used Dragon's Will to carefully explore the dragon ruins. After confirming that there was nothing else, he moved his mind. He switched his consciousness back to his main body. As for the little azure dragon, he would leave it here for now. Just now, Emoshir's virus Zero had killed all the creatures in the lake. It would be impossible for this little mosasaurus to devour and evolve in the short term. After coming out of the dragon cave, Emoshir looked around. At this moment, the snow dancing in the sky was no longer blood red. It had returned to its normal white color. Heavy snow filled the sky and fluttered down. It gradually enveloped the purple-black land and the lake. It would not be long before this place became a pure world again. Emoshur did not use the dragon shadow step. Instead he condensed the blood dragon wings. While hurrying through the sky, he admired the world that was gradually covered in silver. That afternoon, Emoshur returned to base C1. As he walked towards the corpse field, he pondered in his heart. There were 3 things he had to do next. First, let the virus clones slowly clean up the infected creatures in Wuxia. The zombies and mutated beasts in Wuxia, plus the infected plants around the mother's nest, had a total of tens of billions of infected creatures. Even if Emoshur had 10 virus clones, it would be a long work to clean them up. I'll just let my doppelgangers get busy. Second, go to Emperor Qin's mausoleum and sign in. Emperor Qin's mausoleum, there should be something good there. Third, go to the Yellow River 200 kilometers away, condense a Mosasaurus, and let it slowly devour and evolve. However, Emoshur had been fighting and killing for a while. He had to take a break. Otherwise, if he kept fighting and killing without relaxing, he was really afraid that he would go crazy. And the comfortable days in the corpse field were the most suitable for relaxation. It was very quiet here and no one came to disturb him. Here he had Happy to take care of him. Every day after he woke up, he could sit on the recliner under the grape trellis and bask in the sun. Drink some tea. Talk to Happy. In the apocalypse, was there anything more pleasant than this? When Emoshur walked into the corpse field, Happy was reading a book under the grape trellis, The Old Man and the Sea. After Emoshur left, the base chief was afraid that Happy would be lonely and bored alone, so he specially asked someone to find it in the library and asked Little Doe to send it over. Happy was reading very seriously, so much so that she didn't notice Emoshur walking in. The warm sunlight shone through the newly grown grape leaves and onto her body. The whole scene gave Emoshur a beautiful feeling. Emoshur couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Outside the base, there were countless infected creatures, blood and slaughter. It was like the dark side of the world. After experiencing too much darkness, when he returned to the base and saw this scene, it was as if a ray of light suddenly illuminated the dark world. After a while, Emoshur came back to his senses. At that moment, Happy flipped to the last page. After reading it, she let out a long sigh. She looked over the wall beside her and looked at the blue sky, as if she was thinking about something. The old man in the book deeply shocked her. An old man with a weak body fought alone in the sea against a group of sharks. In such a desperate situation, the old man had a tenacious will and an unyielding spirit. It would definitely shock every reader's heart. In the apocalypse, this kind of spirit was definitely a shot to the heart. Everyone in a desperate situation should read this book. Unfortunately, people in the apocalypse only cared about survival. How could they calm down and read? After a long while, she came back to her senses. She looked away from the courtyard. At that moment, she noticed Emoshur. She immediately stood up in surprise. She didn't even have time to put down the book in her hands. She quickly jogged over from under the grape trellis. Unexpectedly, because her attention was on Emoshur, she tripped on the uneven brick floor. She immediately crashed into Emoshur. She couldn't help but press her small face into Emoshur's arms. Even though there was a t-shirt between them, Emoshur still felt his chest burn. The residual heat did not stop and seeped into his heart. Happy's face was burning and her heart was beating. Emoshur couldn't help but rub Happy's head and smile gently. Happy, you've learned bad things. Let me see how many people will read The Old Man and the Sea after reading this chapter. Raise your hand. There aren't many words in this book, but it can bring great shock to people's hearts. Anyway, the author was shocked at that time. Chapter 160. When Happy saw that Emoshur had returned, he was naturally very happy. He fetched some water and a towel for Emoshur. Then he went to make tea for Emoshur. Emoshur took out his bloodthirsty corpse slayer and flattened the corner of the brick that tripped Happy. Then he flattened the other corners of the bricks that were exposed in the courtyard. He did not want to see Happy fall. Happy naturally understood Emoshur's thoughts. He could not help but feel a little touched. After Emoshur finished doing all this, he reached out to stop him. Happy, don't be busy. Come and talk to me. Happy pressed Emoshur down on the recliner. Although she could not speak, her eyes were filled with the concern of a young girl towards her first love. Emoshur understood what she meant. Big brother Emo, you just came back. Sit down and rest first. If you need anything, just tell Happy. Emoshur killed until the sky turned dark outside the base. He felt that his heart was as hard as steel. Sometimes, he even felt that he was no different from those bloodthirsty and brutal infected creatures. But at that moment, he realized that his heart seemed to have melted by Happy. He was still a human. Emoshir thought of something as he watched Happy busying himself with the tasks. Over the years, he had injected Happy with Titan Dragon Enhancer and Brain Cell Enhancer. He had also used Psychokinesis Blessing on her. If it were anyone else, they would have long been the strongest hunter or psychokinesis in the base. But Happy's body did not react. What was the reason? Coincidentally, he had obtained the Blood Dragon's Eye previously, and he could see through appearances to see the essence of things. When he thought of this, Emoshir's pupils began to turn red. Soon his pupils turned blood red. The next moment he saw Happy's attributes. Species human, level, oracle, unawakened, ability? Emoshir's gaze froze. Oracle. Based on the name alone, it seemed to be very strong. Isn't there a Skywalker in Star Wars? But what ability does this oracle have? Emoshir asked the system in his mind. The system replied, Oracle, also known as the Silencer. Hearing this, Emoshir suddenly understood. It was no wonder then why Happy could not speak. She was the so-called Silencer. The enhancers that he had injected into her, as well as the telekinesis blessings, could not make her stronger at all. The reason was naturally because she was already a Heaven's Oracle. Emoshir asked the system again. Even Heaven's Oracle's ability can't tell? The system replied, she hasn't awakened as a Heaven's Prophet, so it's natural that I can't see her abilities. Emoshir was speechless. Then what do I need the Blood Dragon's Eye for? The system was silent. Emoshir couldn't help but complain. You're so quiet, but you're actually the silent one. However, Heaven's Sayer, and the Silencer, reminded Emoshir of a passage from the Analects of Confucius that he had memorized in the past. Confucius said, I have no words to express my desire. Zigong said, if the child does not speak, how can the child explain? The master said, what is the heaven talking about? What does the four seasons do? What does the heavens say? In other words, it means, Confucius said, I'm tired. I don't want to bother with you guys anymore. Zigong was instantly stunned. Teacher, you have to be more careful. If you don't say anything, how are we disciples going to write the Analects of Confucius? Are we just going to make it up? Confucius was exasperated at his failure to meet his expectations. What did the heavens say? The four seasons continue to operate and all living things continue to grow as usual. What did the heavens say? Zigong immediately withered. From the looks of it, this heaven's oracle was an incredible identity. It was just that it had not awakened yet. Emoshir asked in his mind again. System, how do I awaken a heaven's oracle? The system finally spoke again. When it's time to awaken, it will naturally awaken. Get lost. Emoshir cursed. The system was as good as not saying anything. At this moment, Happy had already finished her work. She saw that Emoshir had been staring at her. She couldn't help but blush. Her walk was a little unnatural. She came in front of Emoshir and looked at Emoshir with a pair of bright eyes. It was as if she was saying, Brother Emo, why are you always staring at Happy? With a smile on his face, Emoshir took Happy's hand and said something very eloquent. Seeing Happy, I'm happy. For the next 10 days, Emoshir stayed in the base. He accompanied Happy to feed the zombies, raise the pigs, and talk. It was a little blissful. Of course, with his current identity, he didn't need to feed the zombies and raise the pigs. But what he wanted was the feeling of the two of them working together. In these 10 days, those virus clones had also obtained a lot of evolution points for Emoshir. His total evolution points had already broken through 7 billion. That night, Emoshir waited for Happy to fall asleep before he left the corpse farm. After resting for 10 days, it was time to move around. Using the Dragon Shadow steps, he only took 20 steps. He arrived at the mouth of the Yellow River, which was more than 200 kilometers away. Because plants covered almost every place outside the base. Soil erosion was greatly reduced. Therefore, the Yellow River had long since become clear. The river was much bigger than before the apocalypse. Emoshir stood by the riverbank. Under the moonlight, white waves rolled down. It was like 10,000 horses galloping, but also like thunder rumbling. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Those who had not personally been to the mouth of the Huku, even if they had seen the mouth of the Huku thousands of times in videos, would never be able to understand the shock that struck their hearts. Just as Emoshir was admiring the Huku waterfall under the moonlight. In the hotel that had been abandoned for nearly 30 years behind him, more than 10 zombies saw Emoshir, a human. They immediately roared and pounced on Emoshir. Mosher turned around and looked at these ordinary zombies. From the remaining strips of cloth on their bodies, they should have been hotel attendants. Mosher's dragon thought moved slightly. These zombies were lifted up by his dragon thought and moved above the waterfall. Then they exploded into a bloody mist. The bloody mist slowly gathered and formed a sanguisurincus. Sanguisurincus grew blood vessels, flesh, bones and skin. In the end, it formed a mosasaurus that was as thick as a finger and 1 inch long. Mosher originally thought that the more flesh and blood of infected creatures used to condense the mosasaurus clone, the bigger the mosasaurus clone would be. He didn't expect it to be so big. But this was only the initial state. Let's see if its devouring evolution skill was strong or not. Soon, the mosasaurus was thrown into the waterfall. The mosasaurus was instantly swallowed by the waterfall. It was involuntarily swept away by the river and quickly moved downstream. Mosher waited for it to be washed to a flatter section of the river before entering the dragon cave. At the same time he switched his consciousness into the mosasaurus clone. This mosasaurus clone was still too weak. It was just an ordinary mutant beast. And even if it could use dragon thought with the strength of its brain cells, it couldn't withstand too much dragon thought. Dragon thought was limited to a radius of 1 kilometer. And at this time, dragon thought couldn't be used to attack at all. As long as dragon thought attacked, its head would explode. It's so F***king weak. Mosher sighed and thought to himself. It was too lazy to move, so it floated downstream along the river. It didn't take long for it to come to a pool of water with a slower flow. He probed with dragon thought. It detected that there were many mutant beasts in the water here. A mutated tadpole more than a foot long swam around in the puddles on the shore. A half-meter-long mutant loach drilled into the mud at the bottom of the river. There were also 2 mutated carps more than 5 meters long. They opened their huge mouths, revealing their jagged teeth, and ran amok in the water. Chapter 161. Mosher used his dragon's will to explore this area of water. This was a completely new battlefield for him. He had also tried to return to his main body and use his dragon's will to kill these infected creatures. Then he would let the sea dragon clone devour them. But the system quickly poured cold water on him. Devour evolution skill. It can only devour living creatures. Mosher could only helplessly give up on this idea. At present, in the entire water area, only the mutated tadpoles in the puddles on the shore were the weakest. No, it was clearly his clone that was the weakest. It was impossible to devour this mutated tadpole. Helpless, Mosher could only continue to explore the surroundings with his dragon's will. After searching twice more, he still couldn't find a mutated beast that he could devour. F***ck. Mosher couldn't help but curse in his heart. But as soon as he said this, Mosher's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, F***ck. There should be a nest near this area of water. That was why the occasional plants here had turned blood red. Blood red plants could also be considered infected creatures. Thinking of this, Mosher scanned the area with his dragon's will. When there were no mutated beasts nearby. Then he quietly swam out and came under a blood-red aquatic plant on the shore. The aquatic plant wasn't big, only 1 inch long. It was suitable for him to devour. Mosher opened his mouth. Although the sea dragon clone was small, the 2 rows of teeth in its mouth were extremely sharp. It easily devoured the aquatic plant. Not long after it swallowed it, the body of the sea dragon clone changed. There was a constant cracking sound coming from its body. His bones kept getting thicker and longer. Its muscles were torn apart and reconstructed. In just a few minutes it was more than 2 inches long. Mosher checked the level of the sea dragon clone in his mind again. Species, sea dragon. Level 1 mutated beast. Ability, devour evolution. Mosher was in a good mood to level up so quickly. He probed with his dragon's will and continued to search for infected aquatic plants. In this area of water he found more than 30 infected aquatic plants. If it were other mutated beasts, even if they knew about these aquatic plants, they wouldn't dare to devour them. After all, there were mutated beasts everywhere in this area. Going out would be suicide. However, with Mosher's draconic will, he could easily avoid those mutant beasts without being discovered. Half an hour later, he had already devoured more than 30 strands of seaweed. At this moment his level had increased once again. Race, sea dragon. Level 2 mutant beast. Ability, devour evolution. At this moment the sea dragon clone was already 1 foot long. Mosher scanned the surroundings with his draconic will. There were no more infected plants for him to devour. Next it should be the mutant tadpole in the puddle. However, he did not rashly go there. With the sea dragon clone's current strength, it should be able to fight the level 2 mutated tadpole on par with it. However, with Immortal's cautious personality, he wouldn't take the risk unless the odds were at 10%, let alone 50%. He swam to the bottom of the river near the puddle and hid there. Long Yin had been paying attention to this mutated tadpole. It was like a boy sitting in the back row who had been paying attention to a girl he had a crush on in class. After about 20 minutes, the mutated tadpole finally quieted down. Finally, it slowly fell asleep. Immortal waited for more than 10 minutes until it fell asleep. Then he found a good angle and swam upstream from the bottom of the river. Its tail swayed quickly, bringing a huge propulsion force. It pushed him away from the river. It drew a perfect arc in the air. Plop! It plunged into the mud next to the puddle. Damn, this is so awkward. After all, he wasn't familiar with the sea dragon clone and didn't have a good grasp of the angle. Fortunately, the tadpole was already dead asleep. Immortal twisted his body and pulled his head out of the mud. His fins kept propping up, allowing his body to roll into the puddle. With a plop, water splashed everywhere. The mutated tadpole was finally awakened. In the blink of an eye, Immortal controlled the sea dragon clone, opened its mouth and bit the tadpole's head. Its sharp teeth pierced into the mutated tadpole's round head. The mutated tadpole struggled frantically. But Immortal didn't let go at all. After a while, the mutated tadpole no longer had any strength. Except for occasional twitches, it didn't move anymore. Only then did Immortal control the sea dragon clone and eat it in big mouthfuls. Of course, as a human, Immortal still couldn't accept swallowing mutated beasts. He temporarily switched his consciousness back to his main body. Without Immortal's control, the sea dragon clone only had the instinct to devour. It swallowed the mutated tadpole in big mouthfuls. Immortal waited for it to finish swallowing before returning to the sea dragon's body. It was also at this moment that the notification of the sea dragon clone's upgrade came in his mind. Species, Sea Dragon, Level 3 Mutated Beast, Ability, Evolution by devouring. At the same time, the body of the sea dragon clone once again made a muffled sound. Its bones continued to thicken and lengthen. Its muscles continued to tear and reorganize. After a while, its body length had reached half a meter. At this moment, Immortal's dragon senses swept across the nearby waters. There were more than 50 mutated tadpoles around. These mutated tadpoles were basically level 2 mutated beasts. Only one of the mutated tadpole kings had reached level 3. Immortal had the advantage of level against these ordinary mutated tadpoles and easily swallowed them all. He leveled up again. He who was at level 4 could completely crush the level 3 mutated tadpole king. After devouring these tadpoles, he went to the river to devour the level 4 mutated loaches. This cycle repeated itself. In one night, Immortal's sea dragon clone had been upgraded to a level 7 mutated beast. Its body length had also reached about 3 meters. The pleasure of leveling up really made him feel very happy. This speed was much faster than other mutated beasts leveling up. Seeing that the sky was brightening in the east, Immortal was also a little sleepy. At this time, there was only one level 7 mutated carp left in the entire water area, and more than 30 level 6 mutated toads. It would probably take a few more hours to deal with these guys. Immortal had been devouring all night and was so sleepy that he couldn't even open his eyes. Under the investigation of his dragon senses, he found a level 6 mutated toad. He let the sea dragon clone devour the mutated toad and occupy its nest. Then, his consciousness returned to his main body. He took a step and ran towards the base. Back at the base, Immortal slept for the whole day. When it was time for dinner, Happy brought back food from the cafeteria, but Immortal didn't come out to eat. Happy couldn't help but worry when she saw that Immortal didn't even come out to eat. She came to the door of Immortal's room several times. But when she heard the snoring sound coming from Immortal's room, she was relieved. Maybe Brother Immo went to do something again at night. In short, it was fine as long as Brother Immo was fine. Immortal didn't wake up until the afternoon. After waking up, his first thought was to control the sea dragon clone to devour. It was like a child addicted to playing games. When you played all night and rose from bronze to gold, the next night, you would naturally be energized and want to continue to play platinum, diamond. Chapter 162. Immortal had originally planned to sign in at Emperor Qin's mausoleum today. But at this moment he was addicted to devouring. As soon as he woke up, he wanted to continue using his clone to devour and evolve. If it weren't for the fact that he was so hungry, he would have gone there long ago. Seeing that Immortality had woken up, Happy hurriedly heated up the food again. Now the base had provided them with all kinds of daily necessities. They even had a microwave, an electric cooker, and so on. They even had a luxury home appliance like a refrigerator. One had to know that in the entire base, only the hunting group in the cafeteria had one. In order to save electricity, even the base chief didn't use a refrigerator. The food they ate was also specially made for them by the cafeteria. Bread, cake, twice-cooked pork, roasted chicken, and so on. Even the base chief and the leader of the hunting group couldn't eat it. This wasn't requested by Immortality and Happy, but by the base chief who specially prepared it for Immortality. Although the base didn't do this kind of thing. But it also depended on the person. Immortality had saved the base from danger several times. If it weren't for Immortality, they would have died several times. Therefore they had no objections to Immortality having all kinds of privileges. Not only did they have no objections, but they were even very happy. After all, Immortality had saved them so many times, but he had never asked for anything from them. They wanted to thank him, but they had no way to do so. This made them feel very apologetic. Now, if they could do something insignificant for Immortality, it would lessen the guilt in their hearts a little. They were naturally happy. After dinner, Immortality chatted with Happy for a while, then couldn't wait to go back to his room. He was like a boy who left his girlfriend aside for a game. Now that the sea dragon clone had been condensed, he didn't need to let his main body run to the Yellow River. With a thought, his mind switched to the clone's body on the Yellow River. But when he opened his eyes, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. It turned out that the two mutated carps had unknowingly found their way into his nest. They were devouring the sea dragon's body. Although the sea dragon struggled with all its might, without Immortality's mind, it was still no match for the two mutated carps. A third of its body had already been eaten. The entire lair was dyed red with blood. At this moment, a mutant carp opened its bloody mouth and bit down on the Mosasaurus's head. Immortality was enraged when he saw this. His dragon sense spread out. The two mutated carps struggled painfully for a few days after being attacked by the dragon's thoughts. They quickly turned around and dived into the river. Immortality also had a headache. After this body rose to level 7, it could slightly withstand a trace of draconic will. However, when attacking, it would also cause a lot of damage to his head. After the two mutated carps escaped, Immortality looked back at the remaining 2/3 of the body and smiled bitterly. I was too careless. I should have brought this clone back last night. However, neither his personal storage nor his system backpack could contain living creatures. Even if he brought it back, he wouldn't have anywhere to put it. It seemed that he had to find a way to settle down the sea dragon clone before he left tonight. At this time he took out a bottle of recovery potion, crushed the bottle with his sharp teeth, and swallowed the potion with difficulty. The wound on his back quickly healed. The flesh and blood around the wound were wriggling. 5 minutes later the wound was completely healed. He glanced at the bottom of the river. It wouldn't be long before the two mutated carps became food in his stomach. Next, he spent more than half an hour devouring the dozens of mutated toads. He successfully rose to level 8. His body length also directly reached 6 meters. Being at level 8, he had a complete level advantage over the two level 7 carps. Moreover, at level 8, he had already become an overlord in this water area. He activated his dragon sense and detected the two mutated carps, who were swaggering by at the bottom of the river. Immortality immediately swung his tail and quickly swam toward the two mutated carps. The two mutated carps saw Immortality's sea dragon clone and couldn't help but feel fear. They still remembered the huge pressure emitted by the strange fish just now, which almost crushed their heads. And they had clearly eaten a lot of this strange fish just now. How did it recover so quickly? In horror they turned around and fled. However, could they escape? At level 7 they were much smaller than Immortality, who was at level 8. They were also much slower. Immortality easily caught up with a mutated crocodile and opened his huge mouth. Crack. He directly bit off the tail of the mutated carp. Then he ignored it and continued to chase another carp. He slapped it with his tail. Slap. The mutated carp was directly slapped more than 2 meters away, dizzy and disoriented. Then, Immortality controlled the sea dragon clone to bite the head of a mutated carp and bite off its head. It turned around and caught up with the other mutated carp that was fleeing, biting it to death. After devouring these two mutated carps, the sea dragon clone had reached level 9. Its body length had also reached nearly 9 meters. At this time, There was nothing in this water area that could compete with it. Then Emoshir's consciousness left it, allowing it to devour freely. Early the next morning when Emoshir woke up, his consciousness returned to the body of the sea dragon clone. He found that it had devoured almost all the infected creatures in the entire water area that night. Because the mutated sea dragon had the ability to devour and evolve, everything it swallowed would be converted into the energy it needed for evolution in a short time. Therefore, no matter how much it swallowed, it would not explode. At this time, the mutated sea dragon's body length had reached 10 meters. Its level had also reached level 10. As long as it leveled up one more time, it would become a strong mutated beast. However, almost all the infected creatures in this water area had been devoured by it. Emoshir controlled its body and swam downstream. He would not let go of all the infected creatures he encountered along the way, from large level 7 mutated beasts to small level 1 mutated beasts. It didn't take long for his telekinesis to detect that in front of him, a tributary had been formed because the river had risen a lot more than before. It flowed into a depression in the mountain. After a careful investigation with his telekinesis, he found that this was a reservoir. Under the morning sun, the reservoir was sparkling. On the surface it looked calm. But when Emoshir scanned it with his dragon telekinesis, he found that under the water, there were actually turbulent waves. There were a lot of mutated underwater creatures in the reservoir. And their levels were not high. The highest was only level 7. Emoshir was overjoyed. He controlled the sea dragon clone and entered the reservoir. It was like a wolf entering a sheep pen. The infected creatures in the reservoir fled frantically in all directions. But how could they be as fast as Emoshir's sea dragon clone? It kept catching up with these infected creatures and swallowing them with its mouth open. Half an hour later, the system's voice finally sounded in Emoshir's mind again. Level upgrade. There was no limit or bottleneck to the increase of the sea dragon's strength. In theory, as long as there were countless infected creatures, it could continue to devour and evolve. A series of muffled cracking sounds came from within its body. Its body length grew again. It reached a length of 11 meters. Its eyes had turned blood red. Species, sea dragon. Level 1 strong mutated beast. Ability, evolution by devouring dragon telekinesis attack. When Emoshir saw this, he let out a long sigh of relief. The clone could finally attack with dragon telekinesis. Chapter 163. It took only 2 days for the sea dragon clone to evolve from an ordinary mutant beast to a strong mutant beast. This speed far exceeded Emoshir's expectations. At this moment, he controlled the sea dragon clone to continue devouring in the reservoir. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." Since he had come to the reservoir, he naturally wanted to try and see if he could sign in anything useful to the sea dragon clone here. Soon, the system's voice sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in location, reservoir. Sign in reward, personal reservoir. Soon a small reservoir model appeared in his backpack. The reservoir model looked almost exactly the same as this reservoir. A line of words appeared on it: frowny face personal reservoir. An independent space carried by the sea dragon clone. The sea dragon clone can enter it. It was a simple sentence. But Emoshir's eyes lit up. This was exactly what the sea dragon clone needed the most right now. This personal reservoir was similar to a dragon's den. When the sea dragon entered the personal reservoir, the reservoir would immediately disappear. With a thought from Emoshir, a tubular passage with a diameter of more than 20 meters appeared in front of the sea dragon clone. The sea dragon clone swam into the tubular passage. In the next moment, the tubular passage disappeared into the reservoir. At this moment, Emoshir had already controlled the sea dragon clone to enter the personal reservoir. This personal reservoir was about the same size as the reservoirs outside. Both were the size of a football field. However, there weren't so many mutant beasts in the personal reservoir. There was only one creature, the sea dragon clone. The sea dragon clone was in no danger here. Then, with a thought from Emoshir, the tubular passage appeared in the reservoir. The sea dragon clone left the reservoir through this tubular passage. When it came to the reservoir in reality, the tubular passage quickly disappeared. For the next day, Emoshir let the sea dragon devour in the reservoir. He also tried to teach the sea dragon clone how to enter the personal reservoir. After the sea dragon clone evolved into a strong mutant beast, it was no longer a shell but had developed consciousness. When Emoshir's consciousness controlled the sea dragon clone, its consciousness would give way. When Emoshir's consciousness left the sea dragon clone, its original consciousness would take over the body. It took Immortality half an hour to teach the sea dragon clone how to enter and leave the personal reservoir. Only then did he feel relieved. Next, he could let this fellow devour as he pleased. With its current strength as a level 1 mutant beast, it was basically a third-rate mutant beast in the Yellow River. As long as it didn't encounter any level 2 mutant beasts, it wouldn't be in any danger. Even if it encountered them, it would be safe as long as it hid in its personal reservoir. Since this guy could rely on himself, Immortality's consciousness returned to his body. The next day he went back to take a look and found that the sea dragon clone had become a level 2 mutant beast. Its body length had also reached 12 meters. Seeing that the sea dragon clone was intact, Immortality was relieved. Next it was time to sign in at Emperor Qin's mausoleum. Besides, Immortality planned to bring Happy with him when he left this time. Since Happy was a heaven's oracle, he naturally had to let her gain more knowledge. Moreover, Wuxia was no longer a threat to him. Maybe Happy could awaken the ability of a heaven's oracle after going out and gaining experience. When Happy heard that Immortality was going to take her to the wild area, her first reaction was anticipation. The base was only so big. After living in the base for more than 20 years, who didn't want to go out and have a look? But soon Happy shook her head. She gestured with sign language. "I'm afraid I'll be a burden to Brother Immortality smiled. He patted Happy's shoulder. "Don't worry, the person who can be a burden to your brother Immo hasn't been born yet." That day, Immortality said goodbye to the leader of the corpse farm and left with Happy. The leader didn't dare to scold Immortality like before. When he heard that Immortality was leaving, he quickly said, "Mr. Immo, don't worry. Mr. Immo, don't worry. I'll get someone to take care of the corpse farm for you." Blood dragon wings appeared on Immortality's back. He wrapped his right hand around Happy's waist, flapped his wings slightly and soared into the sky. He controlled his speed and only flew 10 meters per second. First of all, Happy's body was just that of a normal person. If he was too fast, she might not be able to take it. Second of all, there was nothing important. He could just treat it as bringing Happy out for a vacation. Happy looked at the green world below, and her eyes were filled with curiosity. She was like a child who had just come to an unfamiliar place. It was spring. Peach blossoms could be seen below from time to time. From afar they looked like red clouds dotting the green ground. After more than an hour, they finally arrived above Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. Immortality used Blood Dragon's eyes to look. The corpse aura here still seemed to have solidified. Immortality found it strange. Logically speaking, Qin Shi Huang was not as strong as the Zombie King. But this corpse aura seemed to be thicker than the Zombie King. There was definitely something strange about this. Just as he was thinking, a beast-like roar came from Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the Imperial Mausoleum?" Immortality retracted his wings and landed in front of a green-faced zombie figurine. Happy looked at the green zombie figurine curiously. On the way here, Immortality had already told her about Qin Shi Huang. But when she saw the green-faced zombie figurine, she was still very shocked. The terracotta soldiers had really come to life. The green-faced zombie figurine recognized Immortality and said, "So, it's you." His Majesty said that you don't need to report your arrival and can enter the underground palace directly. Then he looked at Happy beside him and said, "But she can't. I have to report to His Majesty first." Immortality nodded. The green-faced zombie figurine immediately entered the mausoleum from an entrance at the back. Around 10 minutes later, the green-faced zombie figurine returned. He made a not-so-standard hand gesture and said to Immortality and Happy, "His Majesty allows you to enter. Please come with me." Then he turned around and led Immortality and Happy to the entrance at the back of the Imperial Mausoleum. There were 10 zombie figurines guarding the place. They entered the entrance and walked forward along the tunnel. After walking for around 50 meters, the tunnel gradually widened. There would occasionally be forks on both sides of the tunnel. There were many fist-sized holes on the stone walls on both sides of the tunnel. After Immortality used Dragon's Will to investigate, he found that there were all sorts of arrows and spears in the holes. There were also many small holes on the ground of the tunnel. There was a sharp spike in each of the holes. One could imagine that if someone barged in recklessly, they would be turned into a porcupine. As they walked forward along the tunnel, there were also stone ball tunnels, poisonous insect traps, moving stone walls, and all sorts of other mechanisms. After walking for another 50 meters, the tunnel opened up. Chapter 164. From the entrance of the mausoleum, Qin Xiaolian passed through all kinds of mechanisms and traps. After walking for more than 100 meters, the scene before him suddenly opened up. It was a huge space. This space was much bigger than the mausoleum outside. It turned out that Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum had emptied out the mausoleum. The mausoleum outside was only the tip of the iceberg. The entire space was as big as a small city. And in this huge space there was really an underground city. According to the history books and archaeologist reports, there was an underground palace under Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. Many palace maids, servants and soldiers were buried with him. Now, it seemed that they had underestimated Qin Shi Huang's ambition. This was not an underground palace but an underground city. In this underground city all the buildings were real buildings. The houses were habitable and there was water in the wells. There were also all kinds of terracotta figurines on the streets and in the rooms. However, these terracotta figurines were real terracotta figurines. They did not come to life like the zombie figurines. These terracotta figurines were imitating all kinds of life scenes. Some were peddling, some were hurrying and some were eating. After Mo Shi's draconic perception scanned the area, he discovered that there were 2 terracotta figurines doing shameless things in one of the rooms. The number of terracotta figurines in the underground city was probably around 150,000 to 50,000. Some people said that Qin Shi Huang had brought his army underground even after his death. In fact, he had brought the entire city underground. As Qin Xiaolian continued forward, a majestic palace appeared. Inside the palace, there were tens of thousands of huge everlasting lamps. One could clearly see the palace. On the main gate of the palace, which was over 20 meters wide, there were 3 big seal characters. Ipang Palace. When Mo Shi was in school he had learned the Ipang Palace. The Ipang Palace described in the book was extremely luxurious and grand. Qin Xiaolian did not expect Qin Shi Huang to bring Ipang Palace underground. Around Ipang Palace, there was a river that flowed around the palace. Within the river there was shining mercury flowing. After entering Ipang Palace, Qin Xiaolian finally arrived at the meeting hall, Happy Palace. In the spacious hall of Happy Palace, the zombie Qin Shi Huang was sitting on the dragon throne. He was born with a majestic aura, and with the addition of the dragon throne, the domineering aura of a king was undoubtedly revealed. To his left was a figurine general with a bronze sword hanging from his waist, Butcher Bai Qi. When Bai Qi saw Mo Shi and Happy he let out a beastly roar. Impudent commoner, how dare you not kneel when you see his majesty? Mo Shi frowned slightly. Did I give you face? The last time you scolded me I ignored you. This time he actually scolded me in front of my girlfriend. Do I not care about my face? At the thought of this, he suddenly extended his dragon consciousness. Butcher Bai Qi immediately fell to his knees with a thump. He knew that this human was the culprit. With anger in his eyes, he tried to stand up. But no matter how much he struggled, it was as if a mountain was pressing down on him and he couldn't move at all. He was just a level 2 mutated zombie. How could they resist Mo Shi's level 2 dragon will? When Qin Shi Huang saw this he was shocked. This person actually had such a miraculous technique? With just a single glance, General Bai Qi was unable to move at all. He immediately turned his head and said to Bai Qi, General Bai Qi, don't be rude. Then he said to Mo Shi, Warrior, if General Bai Qi has offended you, please forgive him. Only then did Mo Shi retract his dragon consciousness. When Bai Qi stood up and looked at Mo Shi, a hint of fear finally appeared in the eyes of the butcher. He had killed millions of enemies and was known as the god of death, also known as the butcher. Even if he was alone, facing thousands of enemies, he wouldn't be afraid at all. But now, facing Mo Shi, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. As the saying goes, the unknown is the most terrifying. Mo Shi's ability had already exceeded the scope of his understanding. In his eyes, this was not an ability that a human could have. Perhaps only a demon could have it. While they were talking, a crow flew in from the side door of the palace. It landed on the stone steps below Qin Shi Huang's feet. The crow let out a hoarse cry from its throat. Your Majesty, I found some traces of that demon Su Fu. When Mo Shi saw this crow, he felt that it was somewhat familiar. It was as if he had seen it before. He immediately activated the Blood Dragon's Eye and looked at the crow. Species, mutated crow, level 3, ability, Heart of a General. When Mo Shi saw this he frowned slightly. Heart of a General? It was said that Jianghu was one of the 4 zombie progenitors. According to the legends he was an extremely terrifying existence. How could this crow have the heart of a general? At the same time he recognized this crow through its corpse aura. Back then when he killed the zombie leader on the broken bridge by the dam, and the mutated owl in the blood-colored city near base C2, they all seemed to have the same corpse aura. No wonder it could come back to life after he killed it twice. But wasn't it infected with the X virus? How could it be with Qin Shi Huang who was infected with the zombie virus? At this moment, Qin Shi Huang said to the mutated crow, "Zhao Gao, you've been working hard these days. Go and rest first. We'll talk about the demon Su Fu later." Obviously, he didn't want to talk about this in front of Mo Shi. The mutated crow nodded and said, "Yes." Then it flapped its wings and flew out of the side door. Mo Shi was surprised. This mutated crow was actually Zhao Gao? The Zhao Gao who was pointing at a deer as a horse. It was getting more and more bizarre. After the mutated crow left, Qin Shi Huang said to Mo Shi, "Warrior, the world is in chaos and evil spirits are everywhere. It's a good opportunity to make a name for yourself. Are you really not willing to follow me on an expedition and pacify the world?" Mo Shi slowly shook his head. "I'm very lazy." With Qin Shi Huang's pride as the first emperor, persuading Mo Shi twice was already the limit. Naturally, he couldn't be as shameless as Liu Bei. He waved his hand and said, "Since that's the case, I won't force you. However, the position of general in the Qin army will always be reserved for you." Qin Shi Huang continued, "Since you've come to the Qin palace, stay for a few more days. Although the Qin palace is no longer as prosperous as before, it's also quiet. I believe you're a person who likes peace." Mo Shi nodded. "Yes." Then Mo Shi stayed in the underground city. He admired the architectural style of the Qin palace with happy, but he also felt that it was interesting. At the same time, Mo Shi probed with his dragon's consciousness. After confirming that Qin Shi Huang didn't send anyone to monitor him, he was relieved. While walking forward, he accompanied Happy. At the same time he said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system's voice sounded in his mind, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum underground palace. Sign in reward. Chapter 165. Mo Shi signed in at Emperor Qin's underground palace. The system's voice sounded in his mind, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, Emperor Qin's mausoleum underground palace. Sign in reward, Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal Virtual Dragon Palace. Damn. Mo Shi couldn't help but feel a little excited. The reward this time was actually a Dragon Palace and the Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal. He had thought that he would definitely get something good from signing. He didn't expect it to be so good. The Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal was one thing, but this Dragon Palace was too exaggerated. And wasn't his future evolution direction a Titan dragon? It was a Western dragon. In his impression, Western dragons seemed to be kings of mountains and lived in caves. Only Eastern dragons would live in dragon palaces. Why did the system reward him with a dragon palace? He checked the two rewards in his mind. Dragon Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal produces natural pressure on dragons regardless of level. Well, it looked very high and mighty. And it was an item that ignored the other party's level. It should be very useful after becoming a Titan dragon. But at the current stage it didn't seem to be useful. After all, there were no living dragons or divine dragons on Earth today. Then, Mo Shi turned his attention to the Virtual Dragon Palace. Virtual Dragon Palace can be set up anywhere. Any creature that trains in the Dragon Palace can stimulate their potential to the greatest extent, increase the speed of body strengthening, help break through the limit, and speed up the evolution process. Well, it was indeed heaven-defying. Any creature that trained in the Dragon Palace could stimulate their potential to the greatest extent. Didn't this mean that if he set up this Virtual Dragon Palace in the base, then everyone in the base could quickly become stronger? And wasn't Happy's oracle ability not awakened yet? If she stayed in this Virtual Dragon Palace for a while, would it be possible for her to awaken her oracle ability? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look forward to it. But there was one thing that made him dissatisfied with this sign-in. The two things that he signed were temporarily useless, and the other was for others to use. He didn't seem to get anything. But at this time, a line of text appeared above the Virtual Dragon Palace. Frowny face host can receive double rewards by signing in at the Virtual Dragon Palace. Battle in the Virtual Dragon Palace can receive double combat effectiveness bonus. Seeing this, Mo Shi nodded secretly. That's more like it. Mo Shi had planned to stay one more night and return to set up the Virtual Dragon Palace the next day. But Happy still felt that the underground palace was a little eerie. Thus, Mo Shi left the underground palace that afternoon. Before leaving, Mo Shi turned his head and looked at the crow beside Qin Shi Huang. This crow had the heart of a general and a minister. Perhaps it would be a disaster in the future. Mo Shi wanted to get rid of it, but he hadn't been able to kill it even though he had tried twice before. Perhaps in the future he would be able to sign in and obtain some magic treasures or skills that specialized in restraining it. When the crow saw Mo Shi staring at it, its pair of round eyes stared back at Mo Shi. After a while, Mo Shi looked away and flew to base C1 with Happy in tow. After Mo Shi left, Crow Zhaogao hissed, "That's right. Your Majesty, this person is a scourge. We cannot let him live." Qin Shi Huang waved his hand. "Don't talk nonsense. Perhaps he will become a general of the Great Qin in the future." Then he said to the crow, "Your mission is to bring General Bai Qi to capture the demon Su Fu." Crow Zhaogao hurriedly prostrated on the ground and said, "Yes." After Mo Shi left Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum, he returned to base C1 half an hour later. With a thought, he set up the entire virtual dragon palace in base C1. The entire dragon palace covered the entire base C1. Of course, just like the virtual sentry tower, no one else could see or touch the virtual dragon palace. Only from Mo Shi's perspective could he see how magnificent the dragon palace was. The gate of the base city was the dragon gate of the dragon palace. It was more than 20 meters tall and magnificent. Looking from the sky, there were about 1,000 palaces in the entire dragon palace. And at the location of the corpse farm was the Dragon King Hall. When Mo Shi landed on the base from the sky, he could feel that the entire base seemed to be different from before. As for what was different, he couldn't figure it out in a short time. After finishing the arrangement, he looked at Happy beside him. He hoped that with the enhancement of the Dragon Palace, he could stimulate Happy's potential as soon as possible and awaken her oracle ability. After midnight that night, Mo Shi said in his mind, "System, specify the Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid and double the sign-in." Sign-in successful. Sign-in reward, 2,000 drops of Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. When Mo Shi heard this, he was secretly delighted. Signing in the virtual Dragon Palace was indeed useful. Previously, he estimated that it would take another 20 days to a month before he could level up again. Now it seemed that he could level up again in half a month at most. The next morning, good news came one after another from the hunter group. In one night, more than 30 people in the hunter group broke through. These people had not broken through for many years. With their physical talent, they could only stop at their current realm for the rest of their lives. But now they suddenly broke through. This made them all pleasantly surprised. However, apart from being pleasantly surprised, they were also puzzled. In one night, more than 30 of them who had not broken through for many years actually broke through at the same time. This was very strange. And this was only the beginning. For the next day, good news came from all over the base. Have you heard? When Uncle Sun from the canteen woke up today, he suddenly found that his strength had increased a lot. After his zombie hunter son saw it, he was surprised to find that he was already a zombie hunter. Are you serious? I remember that Uncle Sun had been injected with Virus X enhancer before. Didn't the enhancement fail in the end? Not only Uncle Sun but also Old Yang in the warehouse, Little Zhang in the water tower, and Chang Zi in the patrol team all became zombie hunters overnight. Damn, what's going on? Someone next to him said, "Not only that, I heard that 5 teachers in the school alone have become zombie hunters. And that teacher Wang actually became a psychokinesis overnight. It seems that something is definitely going to happen in our base." Soon, the news was summarized in front of the base chief. The base chief looked at the news and was also surprised. In the end, his gaze fell on one of the sentences. The closer you are to the zombie farm, the more people break through, and the more people succeed in strengthening. The staff officer next to him said, "Previously there were no abnormalities in the base. Last night Mr. Mo just came back. In one night, more than 30 people broke through in the base, and more than 100 people who failed in strengthening suddenly became zombie hunters or psychokinesis. This must be related to Mr. Mo," the chief nodded. "Ask Leader Gua of the hunter group to come over. I will go with him to visit Mr. Mo." Chapter 166. Mo Shi woke up early in the morning but didn't get out of bed. Instead, he first transferred his consciousness into the Sea Dragon clone. At this time, the Sea Dragon clone had reached a length of 13 meters. It was a level 3 mutant beast. It seemed that this guy had been devouring while he was away. As a level 3 mutant beast, it was invincible within 100 kilometers upstream and downstream. Emoshur switched his consciousness back to his main body. As a level 3 mutant beast, the sea dragon clone had no problem dealing with level 6 mutant beasts with the trace of dragon consciousness he had left in it. He didn't need to keep his consciousness in its body all the time like he did for the previous 2 nights. At the current speed, it would probably become a super mutant beast in at most a month. At that time, it would be invincible in the entire Yellow River Basin. At this time, Happy had already placed the food he got from the cafeteria on the stone table under the grape rack. He knocked on the door of Emoshur's room. Emoshur responded. When he came out, Happy had already placed hot water and a towel at the door. After Emoshur washed his face, the two of them sat under the grape rack and slowly ate breakfast. At the same time, more than 300 meters away from the corpse farm, 3 people were heading toward it. They were the base chief, Guojutao, the leader of the hunting group, and Du Xiaodo. The chief had originally planned to come with the leader of the hunting group. However, considering that Du Xiaodo had worked with Emoshur before, he was the person who knew Emoshur the best in the base apart from Happy. Therefore they felt that it was best to bring Du Xiaodo along. Although Guojutao was already the leader of the hunting group, he still walked with a hint of femininity. He said, "Captain Xiaodo, will we disturb Mr. Emo if we go there rashly?" The chief also looked at Du Xiaodo. Du Xiaodo thought for a moment and said, "Mr. Emo is very easygoing. As long as we don't provoke him, it shouldn't be a problem." Guojutao was stunned and asked, "Then if we disturb him rashly, does that count as provoking him?" This question seemed a little silly. But in front of Mr. Emo he had to be careful. Du Xiaodo recalled the Emoshur in his memory and said, "I don't think so." Guojutao nodded. "That's good." But then he asked, "Wouldn't it be too much for 3 of us to go?" Du Xiaodo said, "I think these are all small problems. As long as we don't disturb him too often, it shouldn't be a problem for us to visit him once in a while." The bureau chief also spoke up. "Yes, with Mr. Mo's height and magnanimity, it's unlikely that he can't even tolerate 3 people." Not long after, the 3 of them arrived at the corpse farm. When Happy saw the trio, he quickly stood up. After all, the 3 of them were big shots in the base. Emoshur pointed to the food on the table and said, "If the 3 of you haven't eaten before, why don't you eat together?" The 3 of them hurriedly replied, "Yes, we have." Emoshur had already guessed their intentions. He took a sip of water and said, "Ask away." The 3 of them were stunned. It seemed that Mr. Emo already knew their intentions. Then this matter was most likely related to Mr. Emo. The chief of the base didn't have the dignity that he usually had in front of others. Instead, he lowered his stance. "Mr. Emo, last night, more than 30 people in the base suddenly broke through. Moreover, many ordinary people who had failed in the past had become corpse hunters or psychics overnight. This should be related to Mr. Emo, right?" Hearing this, Emoshur was secretly surprised. Was the Dragon Palace so effective? On the surface he just nodded slightly. Yes. Hearing this, the 3 of them looked at each other again. As expected, Emoshur continued. "Let everyone train hard. Everyone has the possibility of becoming a corpse hunter or psychokinesis. Those who haven't broken through for a long time will also break through in a short time." A hint of joy flashed through the chief's eyes. Everyone had the possibility of becoming a corpse hunter or psychokinesis. This was simply unimaginable in the past. As for why it was like this, they saw that Emoshur didn't seem to want to say more, so they didn't ask. After staying for more than 5 minutes, the 3 of them left the corpse farm. For the next 5 days, several people in the corpse hunter group broke through every day. In the entire base, there were 50 to 60 ordinary people who became corpse hunters or psychokinesis every day. They also knew that this was related to Mr. Emo. All of them were grateful to Emoshur. At the same time, when Emoshur checked Happy's attributes, he found that there was finally a change. Species, human, level, oracle, unawakened. Ability, unknown. It didn't change much from before, but there was one less question mark. But at least it gave Emoshur hope. It seemed that the virtual Dragon Palace's effect of stimulating potential was also useful to Happy. Emoshur couldn't help but look forward to it. It was also on this afternoon that something unexpected happened to Emoshur. In front of the Leshan giant Buddha of the 4 provinces, one of Emoshur's virus clones was standing there. Now the entire Leshan giant Buddha's body was covered with blood-red vines. It was as if countless blood vessels were crawling on the Buddha's body. The Buddha was blood-red and its eyes were frighteningly red. The 1051 spiral buns on the Buddha's head were all replaced by blood-red sarcomas. The interior of the Buddha had been hollowed out. The entire Buddha was a 71-meter-tall virus hive. Imo-Shi's virus clone looked at it impatiently. His right hand turned into a titan dragon claw and slashed down. Whoosh, an invisible force swept past. The head of the blood Buddha immediately fell to the ground. Plop, with a loud bang, it fell into the river below, splashing up a wave of blood dozens of meters high. Then the Dragon Will clone's psychic power swept across. Bang 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 bang, in the virus hive, all the infected creatures exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Including the entire blood Buddha, it was directly destroyed by his psychic power. At this point, the 10 virus hives in Wuxia were all destroyed. Without the virus hives, these infected creatures could still continue to grow stronger, but the speed of their growth would plummet. But at this moment, a few sounds came from the sky. Clap clap clap. The virus clone looked up. 50 meters above his head, a figure was flapping its wings and hovering there. This person was wearing a black tuxedo. A white shirt. He looked somewhat gentlemanly. However, his pale face, blood-red eyes, and the 2 pairs of sharp teeth in his mouth revealed a hint of ferocity. Behind him there was a pair of black bat-like wings. At the tip of the wings, there were sharp claws that shone with a cold light under the sun. He let out a few squeaks that were half human and half bat. I didn't expect that a mere low-level human could be so powerful. Interesting. Chapter 167. The person with a pair of wings had a hint of mockery on his pale face. I didn't expect a mere human to be so powerful. Interesting. The virus clone looked at this person with a cold gaze. The pale-faced person was still mocking him. However, no matter how strong humans are, they are still a lowly race. After saying that, he no longer hesitated. He flapped his wings and attacked the virus clone. The virus clone also brazenly faced the attack. The Titan's dragon claw slashed at the pale-faced person. Whoosh, an invisible force instantly pierced through that person's body. However, that person's body wasn't split open. Instead, it flickered and disappeared. It turned out that this was only an afterimage left behind by him. When he reappeared, he was already behind the virus clone. Then he opened his mouth. 4 sharp teeth bit down on the virus clone's neck. Blood immediately gushed out from the virus clone's neck. The virus clone wanted to struggle, but soon the strength in his body seemed to have been sucked out. He couldn't struggle at all. After a while, that person let go of his mouth. The virus clone immediately fell to the ground and kept twitching. That person took out a snow-white handkerchief from the inner pocket of his tuxedo. He elegantly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His fingers loosened and the blood-stained handkerchief fluttered with the wind. Like a blood-red butterfly, it floated into the river. That person raised his head and chest. Even his posture looked so noble and elegant. He let out a half-human, half-bat-like squeak. Although your bloodline is lowly with your strength, you are barely qualified to obtain the noble bloodline of the blood race. Just be my servant. The next moment, the virus clone's back began to slowly tear apart. From the crack, a pair of black bat-like wings stretched out. This pair of wings was only the size of a palm at first. However, it grew with the wind and soon reached about 5 meters. Among its 2 rows of teeth, 4 of them were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His ears had also become slightly pointed. Its eyes also gradually turned blood-red. The blood race nodded in satisfaction. From now on, you are my servant. You should call me master. Let me hear you call me that. The virus clone lowered its head respectfully. He said, Master, your servant is willing to serve you. The Blood Clan member seemed very satisfied and nodded with a smile. Not bad, you're starting to look like one. But, however, before he could finish his sentence, the virus clone suddenly exploded. He pounced on the vampire. The Blood Clan member was caught off guard and had no time to dodge. His neck was bitten by the virus clone. However, the Blood Clan member's skin was as hard as diamond. The virus clone's sharp teeth were unable to bite through its skin. The Blood Clan member was a little confused. He had clearly bitten this human. Logically speaking, this human should have turned into a vampire. Furthermore, he should be 100% loyal to him. Why did it turn around and attack him? Of course, he didn't know that the virus avatar was 100% loyal to Imo-Shi. Naturally, it was impossible for him to be loyal to others. However, the Blood Clan member was surprised. However, she still maintained her elegant smile. With a hint of mockery, he said, Do you think a vampire's body is as weak as a lowly human's? Since you've become a vampire, You should know that in this world, there's almost nothing that can hurt a vampire's body. Just as she said that, whoosh, a soft sound was heard. The virus clone's Titan dragon claw pierced into the Blood Clan member's chest. The Blood Clan member looked down. He saw that the dragon claw had completely sunk into his chest. He couldn't help but be stunned. How was this possible? A mere human who had just obtained the bloodline of a vampire. He was just a low-level vampire. And he was already a high-level vampire. How was it possible for him to break through his body? After the shock there was anger. A few minutes ago he was just a mere human being, yet he dared to defile his body with his filthy claws. Unforgivable. Unforgivable. In his anger, his figure instantly disappeared. When he reappeared he was already behind the virus clone. Then his right hand also turned into a sharp claw. It instantly slashed through the virus clone's body. Whoosh, a soft sound was heard. As blood splattered, the virus clone's body was cut into two. Countless tiny tentacles grew out from the virus clone's wound, wanting to connect the two parts of the body together. Seeing this, the Blood Clan member sneered. Filthy thing, you still want to revive? Saying so, his right claw once again reached into the virus clone's wound. The virus clone's blood was flowing out at a speed visible to the naked eye. The virus clone's body also gradually shriveled up. In the end, only a dried corpse with skin and bones was left. Only now did the Blood Clan member's anger seem to have subsided. He once again regained his elegant demeanor. He took out a white handkerchief and wiped the blood off his right hand. His fingers loosened as if releasing a blood-red butterfly. The blood-stained handkerchief once again fluttered in the wind. He elegantly shook his head and sighed. Low-level humans are too barbaric. Even if they obtain the noble bloodline of a vampire, it still can't make them elegant at all. Barbarism is deeply imprinted in their bones. Saying so, he flapped his wings and floated into the air. His elegance didn't lose its dominance. Then, let me conquer this barbaric land and enlighten these barbaric creatures. At the same time in the corpse farm of Base C1, Emoshur was drinking tea and chatting with Happy. Suddenly he paused. Happy looked at Emoshur with concern with her big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Emoshur drank a mouthful of tea and said to Happy, I have something to do. I have some matters to attend to. I'll be back soon. Happy nodded obediently and gestured. I'll wait for Brother Emo to come back. Emoshur stretched out his hand and gently rubbed Happy's head. Then he used Dragon Shadow Step and left Base C1 in a second. When the people in the base saw the 100-meter-tall phantom of a dragon suddenly appear in the sky above the corpse farm, they all lowered their heads respectfully. Emoshur traveled 10 kilometers in a second and rushed to the 4 provinces. Previously, he had been letting these clones kill the infected creatures and didn't pay much attention to them. Therefore, when the clone was in danger, he didn't know. However, when the clone died, he could still clearly sense it. In all of Wuxia, other than Emperor Qin, there were very few creatures that could threaten the virus clones. Now that he could easily kill the virus clones, the person who came was definitely not simple. A journey of more than 1,000 kilometers took him less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes later, he arrived in front of the Leshan giant Buddha nest. Looking at the shriveled corpse of the clone, Emoshur didn't feel sad at all. It was just a clone. However, he was slightly unhappy. Dragon consciousness swept over and quickly locked onto a figure more than 20 kilometers away. That guy was wearing a black tuxedo and had a pair of huge bat-like wings on his back. His skin was pale and his eyes were blood-red. The blood dragon's eye opened, and this guy's attributes quickly appeared in Emoshur's mind. Race, vampire, level 6 super mutated, vampire. Emoshur was slightly surprised. Chapter 168. Emoshur was a little surprised. It seemed that there really were vampires in the world. In his mind, the system's prompt sounded frowny-face vampires are also humans infected with the vampiric virus. Zombies were creatures infected with the X virus. Zombies were creatures infected with the zombie virus. Vampires were creatures infected with the vampiric virus. Thinking of this, Emoshur felt that he seemed to have vaguely grasped something. At the same time, the vampire 20 kilometers away originally planned to go to the nearby human base. But at this moment he suddenly felt that there was a human approaching the place where he had just killed the inferior human. This was the blood sensing unique to vampires. In the places they had just passed, they would leave behind the blood scent unique to vampires. It was similar to the scent left behind by humans. Through this blood scent, They could sense other creatures that appeared within the range of the blood scent. The vampire couldn't help but pause. Could it be that the inferior human had been resurrected? It was necessary to go back and check. Thinking of this, he turned around and flew toward the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha. A moment later he arrived above the Leshan giant Buddha. When he saw the human in front of the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha, he couldn't help but be surprised. The shriveled corpse on the ground meant that the inferior human had not been resurrected. But why did this newly arrived human look almost exactly the same as the inferior human from before? In his confusion, he once again looked at the human in front of him mockingly like before. He could feel that the human in front of him should be very strong. But in his experience, no matter how strong a human was, there was a limit. On his way here from the west, the strongest human he had encountered was only a level 8 hunter. Not to mention a level 8 hunter, even a level 10 hunter was a complete noob in front of him. So when he looked at Immortality, he still had a condescending expression. He said, "I'll give you a chance to serve the noble vampires. If you take it, you'll live. If you don't take this opportunity..." He pointed at the shriveled corpse next to Immortality. "Die." However, as soon as he finished speaking, his gaze suddenly froze. The next moment, boom, he was instantly smashed into the river by a huge force. Plop! The blood-red river water rose a blood wave more than 50 meters high. A huge blood pit instantly appeared in the river water. Shockwaves quickly spread out around the blood pit. Under the terrifying impact of the shockwave, the 100-meter-wide river was directly cut off. When he looked at the center of the river again, the Blood Clan member had long since disappeared from the 100-meter-wide crater. The speed that he was so proud of was not even displayed in front of Immortality before he died. Even when he died, he didn't understand how he died. In the next moment, the severed river water gushed madly into the center of the hole. With a loud boom, the river closed up again. Immortality, on the other hand, was looking through the memories of the Blood Clan member that he had just plundered. It turned out that the Blood Clan virus had already existed thousands of years ago. Humans who had been infected by the blood breed virus would become different from normal humans and become members of the blood breed, also known as vampires. However, the vampires back then weren't that strong. If they encountered humans armed with firearms, they would have no choice but to retreat. Therefore they could only hide in the darkness. This was also the reason why there were only legends about vampires in the world, but no evidence of their existence could be found. They originally wanted to wait for the Blood Clan to become stronger before making a comeback. However, they didn't expect humans' firearms to become stronger and stronger, so they could only hide. Until the end of the world, when the Virus X swept across the world. In the end, the firearms of the humans were all ineffective, and the Blood Clan reappeared. They also found out that after the Virus X and their blood breed virus fused, their abilities became stronger and their strength increased faster. At the same time, their blood breed virus could also assimilate zombies and infected creatures. Now, after nearly 30 years of development, the Blood Clan had become the strongest existence in the Western world. The total number of Blood Clan members had reached more than 1 billion. It wouldn't be long before the entire Western world was completely ruled by the Blood Clan. At the same time, he also found some useful information from the Blood Clan members' memories. Among all the Blood Clan members, the strongest existence was only level 10 supermutated Blood Clan members. They were equivalent to level 10 supermutated zombies and level 10 great hunters. It seemed that due to some kind of restriction, no matter how strong the creatures in the world were, there was a limit. And this limit was level 10 supermutated zombies. After reaching level 10 supermutated zombies, it seemed that no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't break through this limit. Level 10 supermutated zombies were like this. Level 10 supermutated Blood Clan members were like this. Seeing this, Immortality's heart moved slightly. With his current strength, it wouldn't be a problem to crush a level 10 supermutated zombie. If he leveled up 1 or 2 more levels, it wouldn't be a problem to have more level 10 supermutated zombies. After he used up most of his evolution points and leveled up a few more times, he would go to the west and meet the Blood Clan members. At this time, killing this Blood Clan member should be considered a special event. Immortality said in his mind, "System, special event sign in." The system's voice sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in event, kill Blood Clan member. Sign in reward, blood aura sense. Immortality checked this skill in his mind frowny face blood aura sense, passive skill. Leave a trace of blood aura in the places he passed by. Any creature that comes within 100 kilometers of the blood aura can clearly sense it. Emoshir's blood aura sense was much stronger than the blood aura sense of ordinary blood clan members. The blood aura left by ordinary blood clan members could only last for 1 to 3 days. However, the blood aura left by Emoshir could last for about a month. Moreover, the blood aura sense of ordinary blood clan members only had a radius of about 10 kilometers. Emoshir's blood aura sense, however, had a radius of 100 kilometers. Then Emoshir glanced at the Leshan giant Buddha that had turned into ruins and said, "System, sign in at a special location." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in location, Blood Buddha Hive. Sign in reward, Blood Buddha Avatar, Blood Handprint. Emoshir checked the 2 rewards in his mind again. The essence of the Blood Buddha Avatar was similar to the virus Avatar. It was just that one looked exactly like Emoshir. The other appearance was in the form of a huge Blood Buddha. The Blood Handprint was used in conjunction with the Blood Buddha Avatar. The Blood Buddha Avatar would strike with a blood palm that fell from the sky. The blood palm had an extremely strong restraining effect on any zombie or blood clan member. It seemed that this avatar and skill were more mysterious, but in fact they were all virus abilities. After signing in, Emoshir tapped his foot lightly and disappeared from the spot. Only a 100-meter-tall dragon phantom was left. Emoshir turned around and took a glance at the huge dragon shadow 10 kilometers away. He sighed in his heart. This dragon shadow step is powerful, but it's a little too ostentatious. Chapter 169. After Emoshir signed in at the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha, he left the place. At the same time as he left in America, San Francisco base. This used to be one of the 5 bases of America. But now this place had been occupied by the blood breeds. The 150,000 humans in the base had all been infected and turned into blood breeds. In the president's office of the once world-famous Stanford University. It was nighttime. Classical music was playing in the office. An elegant blood breed in a suit was holding a book called The Silence of the Lambs and reading it under the moonlight. He was the strongest existence in the base and also the ancestor of the Smith family. He was now a level 10 super mutant blood breed. Reading books was one of his hobbies. Among all the books, his favorite was The Silence of the Lambs. After a while he closed the book. His blood-red eyes looked at the moon in the night sky outside the window and sighed. Dr. Hannibal is definitely the most elegant cannibal among the inferior humans. If there is such a human in reality, he will definitely become the blood breed with the most potential. It was also at this moment that his elegant face suddenly frowned slightly. As the ancestor of the Smith family, all the members of the Smith family had his blood breed blood flowing in them. He could sense the death of any member of his family. Just now, he sensed that a great-grandson he sent to the east to investigate the situation had died. Someone dared to hurt the blood breeds of the Smith family. Outrageous. But even in his anger, he tried to maintain his elegance. He turned to the door, restrained the anger in his voice and said, "Men." Soon, a middle-aged blood breed with an aquiline nose came in. He gave a medieval salute to Smith. Then he asked respectfully, "Great-grandfather, what can I do for you?" Smith asked, "Have you reached level 8? The aquiline nodded. "Yes, great-grandfather, I just broke through to level 8 super mutant blood breed yesterday." Smith nodded and said angrily but elegantly, "The clansmen I sent to the east were killed. Take 50 clansmen with you and investigate. If it's necessary, kill them all." The aquiline nodded immediately. "Yes, great-grandfather." Smith then added, "That's right. You'd better bring all the strong mutants in the clan. After investigating this matter, we'll sweep through the entire east. All of their infected creatures, including those lowly humans, must submit to the Smith family." The eagle-nosed vampire puffed out his chest and raised his head, replying confidently, "Please rest assured, great-grandfather. Within 10 days the entire east will be the backyard of our Smith family." As he spoke, he once again bowed respectfully in the Middle Ages. Only then did he leave. The trace of anger on Smith's face had completely disappeared. Elegance once again took over his face. His hand caressed The Silence of the Lambs on the table, imitating Hannibal's tone, and said with dignity and elegance, "Someone once tried to investigate me. So I ate his liver with some broad beans and delicious red wine." As he spoke, he imitated Hannibal's voice. Hiss, hiss, hiss. 2 days later. China Base C1. Emoshir woke up, yawned and stretched. After signing in for the past few days, He clearly felt that he would be able to level up again after signing in for another 10 days at most. He switched his consciousness into the body of the Sea Dragon clone. He saw that the Sea Dragon clone was now a level 4 mutant beast. Its body length had already reached 14 meters. Its dragon's will had not reached level 1 Long Yen Shi. But compared to ordinary level 10 psychokinesis, it was much stronger. A level 4 mutant beast coupled with a dragon's will that surpassed level 10 psychokinesis allowed it to run rampant in the Yellow River Basin. As long as it didn't encounter a super mutant beast, it was invincible. However, after being promoted to a strong mutant beast, its speed of improvement had obviously slowed down. Because in the past few days, it had devoured most of the slightly stronger mutant beasts in the Yellow River Basin. It didn't dare to devour the remaining powerful mutant beasts. The weak mutant beasts wouldn't be of much use after devouring them. Immortality was thinking. After this period of free time, he would try to control it to clean up the entire Yellow River Basin. Let it become the overlord of the Yellow River Basin. And in the past 2 days, many people in the base had made breakthroughs in their strength. The hunters in the base had increased to more than 50 people. Once again they had returned to the peak level of the zombie hunting group. After a rough calculation, more than 23,000 of the more than 100,000 people in the base had become corpse hunters or hunter masters. Psychokinesis had also reached more than 600 people. This number was unimaginable in the past. Moreover, there were basically no infected creatures outside the base now. They began to send out zombie hunting groups to explore further areas around the base. They were searching for resources and planning to find a suitable place outside the base to cultivate crops. And all of this was thanks to Immortality. Although they didn't know what Mr. Immortality had done, it was obvious that they had benefited greatly from it. Therefore, everyone was very grateful to Immortality. It was also on this day that Immortality and Happy took a walk in the base after finishing their meal. But at this moment he suddenly sensed something. He sensed with his blood chi that a group of about 300 people had arrived near the Leshan giant Buddha ruins in the 4 provinces. Immortality's blood chi could directly sense the strength of these people. Most of these 300 people were super mutant vampires. The only 2 super mutant vampires were level 8 and level 3. Immortality secretly rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, these guys had been in the west before. If they had come to the east earlier, they would have definitely swept through the entire east. But now, However, with Immortality's caution, even if his strength was far superior to these people, he still had to let his clones test them first. After all, he had just obtained the blood chi, and he still didn't trust this skill very much. Moreover, what if these guys had some trump cards? For example, on the surface he was a level 6 great hunter, but he could kill a level 10 super mutant zombie. Therefore he had to be cautious. Survival was the king's way. Thinking of this, he moved his mind. All 10 virus clones in Wuxia rushed to the 4 provinces. The 300 or so vampires had already discovered base C7, which was not far from Leshan. The leader of the vampires gave an order. Go to base C7 and interrogate those inferior humans. Let's see what dared to kill the members of the Smith family. When the vampires received the order, they immediately spread their wings and flew in the direction of base C7. At the same time, not far from base C7, more than a dozen hunters were exploring the Leshan giant Buddha ruins. A few days ago they heard a roar coming from here. Today they specially came to investigate. Chapter 170. Near the ruins of the Leshan giant Buddha, more than 300 blood breeds were planning to fly to base C7. But at this moment they realized that not far below, there was a group of humans heading towards them. The leading hawk-nosed blood breed immediately waved his hand. The group of blood breeds was about to land on the ground. But at this moment, the hawk-nosed blood breed suddenly raised his hand and stopped the blood breeds. He turned to look towards the north. In the wilderness, a figure was rushing towards them at a speed of 1,000 meters per second. The hawk-nosed blue blood breed was slightly startled. The other blood breeds were also a little surprised. What a fast speed! The hawk-nosed youth said to a level 10 mutant blood breed next to him. This human is not simple. He might be the murderer. Capture him. The level 10 mutant blood breed nodded. Yes. Then he retracted his wings and flew down. He was about to reach Immortality's virus clone. However, Immortality's virus clone only used telekinesis to sweep past him. Rip, the level 10 mutant blood breed was instantly torn in half. This scene caused shock to appear on the pale faces of the 300-plus blood clan members in the sky. Oh no, he's psychokinesis. I'm afraid he's already level 10. Some blood breeds said in panic. They had seen level 10 psychokinesis among humans before. He fought against 2 level 1 mutant blood breeds with his own strength. This showed how powerful level 10 psychokinesis was. Thinking of this, the hawk-nosed blood breed ordered the level 3 mutant blood breed next to him. This lowly human dared to kill the smith breeds. His crime is unforgivable. Kill him for me. The level 3 mutant blood breed replied, yes. He immediately flew down. At this moment, a black spear condensed in the virus clone's right hand. Sky Regicide Dragon Spear. Then with a roar, he threw it at the level 3 mutant blood breed. Whoosh, the black dragon spear shone with a metallic luster under the sunlight. It streaked across the sky like a rainbow. Its speed was as fast as lightning. Poof. It instantly pierced through the level 3 mutant blood breed's mouth. The huge inertia caused the level 3 super mutant blood clan member to fly back 100 meters. Finally, with a ding sound, it was nailed to the cliff behind. 2/3 of the entire front part of the dragon spear sank into the head of the level 3 super variant zombie and the cliff. Only 1/3 of it was left, more than a meter out of his mouth. His body was nailed to the cliff. As a gust of wind blew, it swayed left and right like a pendulum. All the members of the blood clan gasped when they saw this. How was this possible? How could a lowly human be so powerful? They had never met such a human when they were roaming the Americas. This was especially true for the eagle-nosed leader of the blood race. He was both shocked and furious. His great-grandfather had sent him to the east to investigate the murderer. Along the way they would conquer the entire east. They had just arrived and they had already lost a level 3 blood breed. How could they conquer the east? Shocked and furious, his figure flashed and instantly disappeared. When he reappeared he was already behind the virus clone. The next moment, the claws on his wings extended and stabbed into the virus clone's back. Rip! The sound of cloth being torn could be heard. The virus clone was directly torn in half. His pale face revealed a hint of ferocity. Lowly human, lowly species, how dare you provoke the noble blood clan? The rest of the blood clan heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. The eagle-nosed blood race glanced at all his clansmen and said, without a doubt, this human is the murderer of my clansmen. Now that the murderer is dead, we will start by conquering this ancient country and conquer the entire Asia. The rest of the blood clan lowered their heads. Yes. At the same time on the mountain top far away, the hunters saw this scene and were all shocked. These guys seemed to be some Western mutated creatures. Was the person they just killed a mysterious elite? A few days ago I saw the mysterious elite destroy a virus hive from afar. That must be the mysterious elite. At this point, everyone's heart was shrouded in a haze. The mysterious elite was the strongest human they had ever seen. They had seen the mysterious elite cleaning up infected creatures in the vicinity many times. And now the mysterious elite had been killed. And he was killed in an instant. How strong were these people from the west? At this moment, the leader saw the direction the blood clan was flying in and his face suddenly changed. Oh no, they are coming towards us. Hide quickly. But at this moment, another human figure suddenly appeared in the sky without any warning. He blocked all the blood clan. This figure was exactly the same as the mysterious elite from before. The only difference was that he was wearing different clothes. The blood clan were all stunned. Why did this person look exactly the same as the human from before? Twins? Because he had seen the strength of the human just now. Even the eagle-nosed blood clan member didn't dare to be careless now. Lowly human, lowly species. How dare you offend the noble blood clan? Before he finished speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared again. When he reappeared he was already behind Immortality. A pair of sharp claws on his wings had already reached out. However, at this moment his face suddenly changed dramatically. Because he saw that the human had turned around without him knowing. He seemed to be waiting for him. How was this possible? Although the blood clan's flying speed wasn't very fast, their explosive speed was definitely incomparable to other creatures. But now, this human could actually catch up with his speed? But at this moment he didn't have time to think too much. His sharp claws suddenly reached out and directly pierced towards Immortality's chest. At this moment, a blood-red long saber appeared in Immortality's hand. The long saber was streamlined and very high-tech. Dark Ice Devil Slaying Saber. When the blood clan member's sharp claws reached in front of him, the Dark Ice Devil Slaying Saber in his hand gently slashed. Whoosh whoosh, two soft sounds. The pair of sharp claws was instantly cut off. Seeing this, the eagle-nosed Blood Clan member was shocked. He hurriedly wanted to retreat. But there was no time to retreat. The surface of his body was covered by a thick layer of ice. At the same time, this layer of ice continued to spread in all directions. Within a radius of 1 kilometer, the ground, trees, stones, and river were all covered by a thick layer of ice. Even the bodies of the more than 300 Blood Clan members in the sky were covered by a layer of ice almost instantaneously. They were like more than 300 ice sculptures. These more than 300 ice sculptures fell directly from a height of 100 meters. They smashed onto the ground with a thud, and the layer of ice on their bodies was extremely strong. Even if they fell from a height of 100 meters, the ice didn't break. They were still complete ice sculptures. As for the eagle-nosed Blood Clan member, not only was his outer appearance frozen into an ice sculpture, his body was also constantly being corroded by strong acid. His blood-red eyes were filled with endless fear, but he couldn't move at all. Chapter 171. The mystical Ice Devil Slayer only needed 1 slash. And it was only on the claw of the level 8 supermutant vampire. As a result, the area within a 1 kilometer radius was instantly frozen. The hawk-nosed vampire who was slashed naturally couldn't escape death. What surprised Immortality was that the rest of the vampires were all frozen as well. And after being frozen, the cold air penetrated into their bones. Their blood solidified at an extremely fast speed, and their bones became extremely fragile under the ultra-low temperature of the ice. Immortality's dragon sense swept across. Whoosh, the sound of ice breaking was heard. The 300 ice sculptures all shattered at the same time. They shattered into blood-colored ice pieces on the ground. On the mountain top in the distance, the human hunters saw this scene and were all surprised and happy. Mysterious powerhouse, this is the real mysterious powerhouse. One-hit kill. A real one-hit kill. That guy with wings should be a super mutant zombie. But he was killed by the mysterious powerhouse in 1 hit. How strong is he? I'm more concerned about the one who died before. Could it be the clone of the mysterious powerhouse? Well, it's possible. I heard that the mysterious powerhouse is a human from the C1 base. Maybe they used the genes of the mysterious powerhouse to clone some clones. At this time, Immortality looked at the mystical Ice Devil Slayer in his hand. This blade did have a strong restraining effect on vampires. Vampires also had an extremely strong self-healing ability. But the extremely cold air released by the mystical Ice Devil Slayer could make their cells completely lose their vitality. In other words, it could directly kill their cells. This way their self-healing ability wouldn't be of use. Putting away the mystical Ice Devil Slayer, Immortality checked the memories of the few vampires that he had just plundered in his mind. He had a rough understanding of the Smith family's strength. There were more than 30 super mutants. There were 2 level 10 super mutants. There were more than 30,000 below super mutants. Other than that, under their rule, all the zombies in San Francisco added up to more than 8 million. No wonder they wanted to sweep the East. Normally, with such strength, it wouldn't be a problem to sweep the East. But unfortunately they met Immortality. There was a saying, those who offend my Debong will be punished no matter how far away they are. Since they had repeatedly invaded, then it was necessary to pay them a visit. Clean them up from the roots. However, before going to America, Immortality planned to reach level 7 first. Although Immortality was at level 6, he had a 90% chance of wiping out the Smith family. However, if he wasn't 100% sure, he wouldn't easily make a move. Moreover, Immortality knew from the memories of that hook-nosed vampire that the Smiths weren't the only vampire clan. The ancestor of the blood race was actually Count Dracula. As for the blood clan that Count Dracula had transformed into, there were as many as 13 families. These 13 families now ruled almost 2/3 of the Western world. If Immortality wanted to exterminate the Smith family, he would become the enemy of all vampires. Therefore, it would be good if he could improve his strength before going to the West. Thinking of this, a pair of blood dragon wings appeared on his back. After a slight tremor, he flew toward base C1. At the same time, in America's San Francisco base, Stanford University, the president's office. Amidst the elegant classical music, the ancestor of the Smith family was carefully reading The Silence of the Lambs. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, he exuded an elegant temperament. However, at a certain moment he suddenly raised his head and looked at the night sky in the east. There was a trace of murderous intent between his brows. He could clearly sense that the 300 or so members of the Smith family that he had sent had all been killed. One was a level 8 super mutant, and the other was a level 3 super mutant. They had more than 300 strong mutant vampires. He had thought that such a force could easily wipe out the barren land in the east. However, he didn't expect that the 300 or so people would be wiped out as soon as they arrived in the east. Preposterous. How preposterous. Even someone as elegant as him couldn't hide the anger in his heart at this moment. Man, call all the vampires back. In 10 days I will wipe out the barren land in Asia. 9 days later at night, Immortality switched his consciousness into the body of the sea dragon clone. At this time, the sea dragon clone had already reached 15 meters. Its level had risen to level 5 super mutant. Its telekinesis had also risen to level 5. In fact, at the beginning, Immortality wanted to directly let it use the dragon mind. However, after using it a few times, he found that the dragon mind was still too powerful and overbearing. With the strength of its brain cells, it couldn't withstand the overbearing dragon mind at all. Every time the dragon mind attacked, the sea dragon clone would wither for a while. Immortality had also tried to let it take brain cell enhancers. However, for some reason the brain cell enhancers had little effect on it. Therefore he could only let it use its telekinesis for the time being. After it became a super mutant, it might be able to use the dragon mind. A level 5 super mutant coupled with level 5 telekinesis. As long as it wasn't too stubborn to fight a super mutant, it would be very safe in the entire Yellow River. Immortality thought to himself that after returning from the west, he would seize the time to raise its level. After all, the upper limit of the sea dragon clone was a level higher than his own body. A moment later his consciousness switched back to his body. Looking at the time, it was already 11:30 at night. It seemed that nothing special would happen today. He said in his mind, "System, specify the bloodline modification liquid and double the sign in." The system replied instantly as usual, frowny face sign in successful. Sign in reward, 2,000 drops of Titan Dragon bloodline modification liquid. Soon 2,000 small bottles appeared in his system backpack. Immortality took out 100 bottles each time. With a thought, the dragon mind opened these 100 bottles. With another thought, the 100 drops of modification liquid condensed into a water ball the size of an egg. He swallowed it in one gulp. And so it went back and forth. When he finished swallowing all 2,000 drops of modification liquid, the heat in his body surged again. In 5 minutes, his body temperature had reached its limit. As the heat flowed through his body, he could use his draconic telekinesis to detect where the heat flowed through. His cells became stronger once again. The capacity inside also increased. Now, every upgrade was to prepare for the realm after the Great Hunter realm. After the Great Hunter realm, he would be able to use energy in the true sense. And energy was usually stored in every cell in the body. Therefore, the stronger the cells were now, the more capacity they would have. After reaching that realm in the future, the more energy there would be in the body. Imagine, at the same level, your energy was more than 10 times or even dozens of times more than that of others. Wouldn't you be able to easily defeat your opponent? Chapter 172. During the process of upgrading, Immortality suddenly had an idea. Since his cells would have to withstand energy in the future, did that mean that he could use the energy on his back to temper his cells now? This way, when he reached that level in the future, his cells would be able to accept that energy with ease. At the same time, he would be more familiar with energy. Thinking of this, he tried to transfer the energy he had obtained from the Plague Dragon's ruins to his entire body. However, he did not have a way to transfer the energy at all. Naturally, it was impossible. However, a moment later, he suddenly thought of whether he could use the dragon's will to forcefully transfer the energy to other cells in his body. In the end, he tried it and it really worked. He immediately used the dragon's will to transfer all the energy on his back to all the cells in his body. In fact, telekinesis was a mental ability and had nothing to do with energy. Normal telekinesis masters couldn't use telekinesis to move energy. However, the dragon's will could. The dragon's will was a unique telekinesis of the dragon race. This kind of telekinesis was a mixture of spirit and energy. It was a special kind of spirit energy. Therefore, he could use the dragon's will to transfer energy. This blood-red energy was transferred to all the cells in Immortality's body. His cells suddenly swelled. It was as if they were about to explode in an instant. Fortunately, his cells had been modified by the modification liquid and had far exceeded the strength of human cells. Therefore, although his skin was red and seemed like it could explode at any time, he was still barely able to withstand this energy. This process only lasted for a minute before Immortality felt that he could no longer withstand it. He could only hurriedly transfer all the energy back to the shoulder blades on his back. This energy seemed to only be obedient when it was in the shoulder blades. Phew, he let out a long breath. Immortality used the dragon's will to explore every cell in his body. He could clearly feel that every cell was several times stronger than before. Their capacity was also several times larger than before. He could not help but feel happy. So this really worked. If he had known earlier, he would have used this energy to temper his body long ago. In fact, Immortality was still thinking too much. Before he reached level 7, his body could not withstand the impact of that huge energy. Now that he had just reached level 7, it was just right to temper his cells. At this moment, Immortality's body temperature returned to normal. He checked the attribute interface in his mind. Name, Immortality. Level 7 Great Hunter. Level 2 Long Yen Shi. Evolution direction, Titan Dragon. He had finally become a level 7 Great Hunter. At level 7 he was confident that he could defeat any level 10 Great Hunter or level 10 super mutated creature. Since he had leveled up, he should go to San Francisco tomorrow. The next morning, when Immortality ate breakfast, he habitually used the blood dragon's eyes to observe Happy. Happy's attributes appeared in his mind. Species, human. Level Oracle, unawakened. Ability, unknown. Immortality's eyes lit up. Finally there was one less question mark. Happy was only a question mark away from truly awakening to the power of a prophet. Happy saw that Immortality seemed to be looking at her lecherously. She couldn't help but blush and lower her head. His heart was pounding like a crazy rabbit. Immortality loved to see Happy's bashful expression. He looked at it even more seriously. Happy occasionally raised her head and saw that Immortality's gaze seemed to be even more lecherous. She couldn't help but feel her heart beat faster. Immortality couldn't help but laugh. After breakfast, Immortality told Happy that he had to go out for a while. Happy made a sign. Go early and come back early. Immortality nodded, then used Dragon Shadow Steps and ran toward San Francisco. It was more than 10,000 kilometers away. If he used Dragon Shadow Steps, he would only need to take more than 1,000 steps. But because there was a large part of the journey in the middle, he had to cross the sea. Therefore, Immortality could only fly most of the time. He traveled 1,000 meters per second, and there was a delay of a few minutes. In the end, it took him more than 20 minutes to reach the sky above San Francisco. Looking down from here, he saw that the entire San Francisco was red. There were actually 5 mother nests in San Francisco. Thousands of blood-red vines spread out from the 5 mother nests. These blood-colored vines crawled all over the buildings, all the streets, the broken lampposts, and the overturned cars. They almost occupied the entire city. Along with the blood-red vines, zombies also occupied the entire city. Before the apocalypse, there were only more than 800,000 people in San Francisco. But the nearby Bay Area had more than 7.6 million people. When the vampires attacked the San Francisco base, the 7.6 million infected zombies also focused on attacking the San Francisco base. Now the vampires had occupied the San Francisco base. More than 8 million zombies were wandering around the San Francisco base. The Golden Gate Bridge, which had been broken countless times in countless movies and TV shows, was really broken now. There were countless blood-red vines hanging down from it. In the setting sun, the blood-red vines looked like thousands of blood snakes, sticking their heads under the bridge to drink water. It looked exceptionally strange. On the shore of the strait under the bridge, a rusty aircraft carrier lay diagonally on the shore. It was like an old man who didn't have much time left, lying on a recliner at the door, feeling sad and self-pity at the setting sun. In the city, collapsed buildings could occasionally be seen. What used to be the walls of the base were now nothing but rubble. Immortality looked down with the blood dragon's eye. He saw that the entire city was shrouded in an extremely dense corpse aura. In this corpse aura he could also see an even denser and blood-red blood aura. Obviously this blood aura was emitted by the vampires. For any other human this city was hell. But for Immortality, it was just another place where evolution points gathered. He glanced at the evolution points in his mind. Now his evolution points had reached 7.1 billion. After destroying all the infected creatures in this city, his evolution points should be able to break through 8 billion. At the same time in this city, the only place that was not covered by the Sanguisurincus was the former Stanford University. This place was still covered by green plants. At this time, in the open space in front of the principal's office at Stanford University, there were more than 30,000 members of the blood race standing there silently. Each of them had a pair of bat-like wings. Their faces were pale and their eyes were blood red. In the sky in front of them, two vampires flapped their wings and floated in the air. These two vampires were both level 10 supermutated vampires. One of them was the ancestor of the Smith family. The other was his wife. The ancestor of the Smith family sized up the 30,000 vampires below with his blood-red eyes. He let out a half-human, half-bat voice from his throat. In the wilderness to the east, there are inferior humans who dare to hurt the people of the Smith family. Their dirty claws cut open the noble bodies of the vampires. Their despicable actions tarnished the noble souls of the vampires. They dare to offend the vampires, offend the Smith family. Our response is only one word. All the 30,000 vampires of the Smith family had blood-red eyes and pale faces. They raised their right arms and shouted in unison, "Kill!" Chapter 173. The Smith family had more than 30,000 clansmen. Among these clansmen, the weakest had already reached level 5 strong mutant vampire. There were more than 30 supermutant vampires. The two strongest among them had already reached level 10 supermutant. If the human world knew that there was such a force, they would probably be in despair. With such a huge force, there was no need to think about when the human civilization could be rebuilt. Thinking about the current number of humans, how they could survive was the most important thing. Under the instigation of Elder Smith, the 30,000 vampires were furious. Despicable low-class humans, how dare they use their dirty claws to blaspheme the noble bodies and souls of the vampires? Kill them. The low-class species in the wilderness have no civilization to speak of. To deal with such species, we can only use violence to curb violence. The vampires will conquer the entire world. In the sky above San Francisco, Immortal's dragons will detected this. There was not a trace of emotion in her cold eyes. You have no chance to kill your way to the east. Because I'm here. In the next moment, Immortal's dragons will move. In the dilapidated city of San Francisco. On the road. A wandering zombie's body suddenly froze. Then, its head actually rolled down to the ground. The skin and flesh on its body began to fall off. Then, its internal organs and bones. In the end, its body was like melted chocolate, forming a sticky mass of flesh and blood. Its head saw its body turn into flesh and blood with its own eyes and instinctively struggled to escape. Roar, its mouth was also constantly letting out fearful roars. But without arms and legs, how could a head run? Could it use its teeth to open and close and support its head to escape? A moment later, its head was also like melted chocolate. It gradually turned into a mass of flesh and blood and merged with its body. At the same time, around this zombie. On the streets, in the cars, in the shopping mall, in the amusement park. Like it, all the other zombies began to melt. Not far away, a strong mutated zombie saw this scene. Its eyes were filled with endless fear. Just think about it, how strange and terrifying would it be if everyone around him suddenly melted like chocolate. In its fear, the strong mutated zombie quickly jumped and fled into the distance. However, when it landed on the ground, it smashed heavily into the ground. He rolled another 20 meters before finally coming to a stop. It quickly sat up and looked at Zhuangzi. He saw that his feet had already melted. Then its legs and hands melted as well. He screamed in terror. No. However, this roar only came out halfway before it abruptly stopped. Because even his neck had melted. At the same time, the same scene was happening in every corner of the city. Among the more than 8 million zombies, except for the supermutated zombies, the rest were all melting into a mass of flesh and blood. Then the flesh began to wriggle and wriggle faster and faster. Looking down from the sky, one could see that all the flesh and blood in the city were on the streets, gathering in the direction of a park. When those super mutant zombies saw this scene, they were all terrified. The scene before their eyes had completely exceeded their understanding. They had no idea what was going on. They could only flee in all directions, trying to avoid this sudden disaster and prevent their bodies from melting. The wriggling flesh and blood on the street eventually gathered and took shape in the park. First, a pair of huge feet condensed. Then, a pair of feet and legs condensed on this pair of feet. Then, an upper body slowly condensed. In Stanford University, Ancestor Smith was passionately motivating the people before the war. At this moment, a vampire suddenly discovered that in the city behind Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a huge blood-colored figure was slowly condensing and taking shape in the distance. The vampire's heart skipped a beat as he pointed in that direction. What's that? The other vampires also saw the huge figure. All of them had shocked expressions on their faces. When Ancestor Smith saw that a vampire dared to disrupt his speech, a trace of anger flashed across his brows. However, because he had to maintain an elegant posture, this trace of anger quickly disappeared. He reminded, "When others speak, it's best to listen carefully. This is respect for others and also a sign of education. At the same time, it's also a necessary quality to become an elegant vampire." In the past, when Ancestor Smith reminded these vampires, they would immediately realize that they had made a big mistake. They would apologize to him immediately. However, this time, not only did these vampire disciples not apologize, but even more of them started to make a ruckus. Even more anger flashed across Ancestor Smith's brows. He was about to reprimand these disciples. As an elegant vampire, no matter what happened, they shouldn't be so noisy. However, at this moment, his wife beside him whispered, "Dear, something happened." Hearing this, Smith turned around. He followed his wife's gaze. When he saw it, his heart couldn't help but tremble. He saw that between the skyscrapers in the distance, a huge blood-red body was slowly condensing and taking shape. At this moment, the entire body had already condensed and formed, leaving only half of the head. A moment later, the huge head had also condensed and formed. Could it be that those dirty zombies have mutated into giant zombies? No, it doesn't look like a zombie. I think I've seen it somewhere before, but I can't tell where. A trace of inexplicable fear appeared in the hearts of the vampire disciples. In the face of the unknown, humans would feel fear. Similarly, bloodstains would also cause fear. Ancestor Smith had read a lot of books, so he recognized it at a glance. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Buddha." That's right, this was a Buddha. It was almost identical to the Leshan Great Buddha. Its legs were bent, and it was sitting on a foundation made of flesh and blood. Its expression was serene and calm. Its eyes were lowered, looking down at all living beings. However, this Buddha was more than 10 times taller than the Leshan Great Buddha. It was more than 1,000 meters tall. And the Buddha's body was blood red. The entire Buddha's body seemed to be emitting a vast demonic aura. It was gloomy and filled with demonic aura. Even these vampires didn't seem to dare to look directly at it. Buddha was originally a symbol of light and majesty. But now, this blood Buddha was emitting a demonic aura that even the vampires didn't dare to look directly at. With this demonic aura, it intimidated all demons. All the vampires below the supermutation level were terrified when they saw this huge blood Buddha. They couldn't summon the slightest thought of resisting at all. Even the supermutated vampires only had one thought when they saw this huge blood Buddha: run. Mr. and Mrs. Smith were level 10 supermutated vampires. They were the most powerful beings in the entire city. Their feelings were especially obvious. Chapter 174. The huge blood Buddha not only made all the vampires panic. Even the two strongest existences of the vampires, the level 10 supermutated vampires, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, were terrified. As level 10 supermutated vampires, they felt this blood Buddha more clearly than the other vampires. It was like a primary school student compared to a boxing champion. Although he knew that this boxing champion was very powerful, he could not personally experience how terrifying this boxing champion was. And a boxer who had really learned boxing for a few days, when facing the boxing champion, would feel far more real than a child, and he would be more aware of the boxing champion's terrifying strength. At this moment, the 1,000-meter-tall blood Buddha with monstrous demonic aura slowly moved. It slowly raised its right hand. Then it slowly pressed towards the ground. At the same time, the flesh and blood on the blood Buddha's body kept gathering towards the giant palm. In the beginning, the giant palm was only more than 100 meters wide and less than 200 meters long. But as the flesh and blood on its body kept gathering on the giant palm, the Buddha's palm began to rapidly grow longer, wider, and thicker. Its length changed from more than 100 meters to 200 meters, 400 meters, 800 meters. In the end, all the flesh and blood on the blood Buddha's body merged into the giant palm. The length of the giant palm actually reached 5,000 meters. Its width was also 3,000 meters. The huge blood-red palm covered 1/3 of the sky in San Francisco. Then the blood-red palm accelerated. From a height of 500 meters, it suddenly slapped down. In Stanford University, which was covered by the blood palm, the 30,000 members of the blood race were terrified. They wanted to escape, but they found that they couldn't even move their feet. The vampires above the supermutation wanted to display the speed that they were most proud of. But when the huge blood palm slapped down, they found that they seemed to be moving in thick honey. It was almost impossible to move an inch. Mr. and Mrs. Smith were the fastest to react. When the blood palm was still in the process of condensing, they had already turned around and fled. However, at this moment when the blood palm was condensed, their speed also suddenly decreased. Ancestor Smith raised his head and looked at the huge blood palm. The palm lines on the blood palm were like ravines. It pressed down on him. At this moment, Smith could no longer maintain his elegance. Who said that one had to maintain elegance in the face of pressure? It was pure nonsense. To be able to maintain grace in the face of death was definitely a lunatic, a pervert. Smith, on the other hand, was a normal vampire. The next moment, boom. The gigantic bloody palm that was 5,000 meters long slammed heavily onto the ground. The earth shook violently. All the skyscrapers in the city collapsed under the violent shaking. Around the giant palm, shockwaves swept across everything on the ground and spread out in all directions. Abandoned cars were sent flying. Abandoned phone booths were also uprooted. The debris of the collapsing building was also swept away by the shockwave and flew into the distance. The shockwave was like a tsunami. In just a few seconds it swept through the entire city. At the edge of the city, when the shockwave swept over, the Golden Gate Strait stirred up huge waves. The worn-out aircraft carrier was directly swept to the mountainside on the opposite shore by the huge wave. Then it rolled along the hillside. With a loud splash, he fell into the Golden Gate Strait. Huge waves were created. The Golden Gate Bridge, which was already broken, creaked and groaned in the shock wave. It twisted and fell into the sea. After a full 5 minutes, the shockwave tsunami slowly disappeared. Then he looked at the city shrouded in smoke and dust. It was as if it had just experienced a meteorite impact. The entire city had been razed to the ground. All that was left of the 5 mother nests were broken walls and dilapidated walls. Just the aftermath of the bloody palm destroyed the 5 mother nests and the super-mutated zombies in the 5 mother nests. All the sanguisurincus in the city were swept away by the shockwave. The blood-red plants had also completely disappeared. The blood-red walls were completely destroyed. The blood-red ground seemed to have been washed away. The entire city was not blood-red at all at this time. The blood-red giant palm was condensed from the flesh and blood of the infected body. It should have generated a stronger infection body. However, the truth was that the blood-red giant palm slammed down. It killed all the demons and cleansed the universe. The entire world was quiet, looking at Stanford University again. At this time, there was no trace of Stanford University. There was only a huge palm print that was 5 kilometers long, 3 kilometers wide, and 5 meters deep left there. And this huge palm print was blood red in color. All the red color in San Francisco had retreated. Only this huge palm print was left, as red as blood. If I become a demon, there will be no demons in the world. Sweeping across the 8 wastelands, swallowing the 6 directions. This was the Blood Buddha clone, the realm of the blood palm. In the blood palm, the 30,000 vampires had long disappeared. Not even their flesh was left. The only thing left were 2 broken heads. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. At this time, the heads of the couple were badly mutilated. Their skulls could be seen directly. But their eyes still barely retained a trace of life. In their eyes there was fear, despair, and confusion. Many complicated emotions intertwined. They didn't know who they had offended. They didn't know who had such terrifying strength. Killing 30,000 vampires with 1 palm. Even the 2 super-mutated vampires didn't have the chance to escape. It was too terrifying. It was really too terrifying. Thinking of the Blood Buddha from before, he seemed to understand a little. That was the mysterious power from the mysterious East. Since ancient times, he had often heard people say that the mysterious East possessed a mysterious power. However, after becoming a vampire, he threw all of this to the back of his mind. Especially after becoming a level 10 super-mutated vampire, he was even more disdainful of the mysterious East. What mysterious power was more mysterious than the noble vampires? It was just a group of uncivilized barbarians. However, now he knew that there really was a mysterious power. Especially that eastern country, it was a mysterious and powerful country. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have sent people to that country. He shouldn't have provoked that mysterious power. However, it was too late for regret. At this time, under the suppression of this mysterious power, even his self-healing ability had disappeared. In the midst of all the regret, the Smith couple's consciousness gradually became confused. At the last moment before their consciousness completely fell into darkness, they seemed to see a figure from the east in the sky. The blood-red wings behind him were so red that they shone under the setting sun. These blood-red wings were thousands of times more noble than the bat wings of the vampires. In the next moment, the two of them completely lost consciousness. Even their only heads had turned into blood and seeped into the ground. At this time, Mo was floating in the air above San Francisco. Looking down at the ruins of the city that seemed to have been hit by a nuclear bomb, there was also a trace of shock in his eyes. The bloody handprint that absorbed 8 million zombies was actually so terrifying. With one palm, a city was destroyed just like that. None of the 30,000 vampires could resist at all. And just now, when his consciousness entered the Blood Buddha clone, he looked down on everything and looked down on the common people. He truly understood a sentence: all living things are ants. He looked down at the ruins of the city. Although the city was destroyed, all the blood-red vines, zombies, hives, and vampires were also destroyed at the same time. He seemed to have understood something in his heart. He murmured, "All living things are ants and everything is like floating clouds." Chapter 175. Mo's consciousness was in the Blood Buddha avatar just now, looking at the world from the perspective of the Blood Buddha. The feeling of being the world and looking down on all living things gave him a hint of enlightenment in his heart. Tens of thousands of ants, only I am supreme. With this hint of enlightenment, Mo's dragon's will, which hadn't increased for a long time, actually grew rapidly. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. In the end, his dragon's will actually reached 10 times more than before. Only then did the growth of his dragon's will stop. This was a pleasant surprise. Mo could feel that if he had this enlightenment 2 more times, his dragon's will could be upgraded to level 3. If it reached level 3, he might be able to easily crush a level 10 super mutant vampire with just his dragon's will. Then, Mo took a look at his evolution points in his mind. The more than 8 million mutated zombies and more than 30,000 vampires just now gave him nearly 1 billion evolution points. The total number of evolution points had already exceeded 8 billion. He only needed the last 2 billion to upgrade the system again. Next, Mo said in his mind, "System, sign in for a special event." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face: sign in successful. Sign in event, eliminate the vampire Smith family, sign in reward, 1 blood slave, blood slave? Mo checked this reward in his mind. This blood slave was a small bat the size of a palm. It looked like an ordinary bat. When Mo focused all his attention on this blood slave, a line of words appeared. Blood slave, condensed from the flesh and blood of vampires. Dragon's will can be poured into it and used as a scout. The blood slave can ignore any detection of telekinesis, energy, consciousness, danger perception, and the like. Mo was secretly happy. This blood slave came at the right time. Just before Ancestor Smith died, he plundered the memories of that ancestor. From that guy's memories, he knew that there were 12 other families in the vampire race. The number of vampires in each family reached tens of thousands. Every family had a level 10 super mutant vampire. And above all these families was the true ancestor of the vampire race, Count Dracula. He was a member of the blood race who stood at the pinnacle of the world. Its ability was far beyond that of a normal level 10 blood breed. There was some kind of restriction in this world. As long as he reached level 10, he would encounter that restriction. Even if the strength of his body could continue to increase, and his speed could continue to increase. However, he was still unable to break through his limits and reach the next realm. Count Dracula, the ancestor of the blood race, was a super powerful being who was infinitely close to breaking through that limit. As for how strong he was, no one knew. Because no one had ever seen Count Dracula. Mo was still thinking about how to find out more about Count Dracula's lair. Now that he had this blood thrall, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. With a thought, he took out the blood slave from his backpack. At this moment, the blood slave did not have any consciousness. It remained motionless in Mo's palm. It seemed to be just a lifelike bat. He split a strand of dragon will and infused it into the bat's body. In the next moment, the bat seemed to come alive. It flapped its wings and flew up. Mo could feel that after this strand of dragon will entered the blood slave's body, it was no longer his own dragon will. It had completely become the blood slave's dragon will and developed an independent consciousness. And it also had its own unique growth system. This growth system did not require Mo to check on it from time to time like the sea dragon clone. The blood slave's growth was completely independent. Mo did not need to care about it and it could grow freely. Of course, it still obeyed Emmosher's orders 100%. And it could also communicate with Emmosher using Dragon Will and report the situation at any time. Emmosher used Dragon Will to issue an order to the Blood Slave. Go to all the Blood Breed settlements and investigate their strength. The Blood Slave squeaked in response, flapped its wings, and silently disappeared into the darkness that gradually enveloped the earth. Emmosher, on the other hand, took out the dragon's lair with a thought. He entered the dragon's lair to cultivate Longwei. Although with his current strength he was confident that he could dominate the world. But it was better to be careful. He would not act rashly before the Blood Slave figured out the situation. While cultivating Longwei, he also tried to transfer the energy in his back and shoulder blades to his whole body again, using it to refine every cell in his body. This time he managed to last several times longer than before. He could already last for half an hour. The next morning, after Emmosher woke up, he used Dragon Will to communicate with the Blood Slave. The Blood Slave had already investigated the strength of the two blood breed families in one night. But Emmosher did not immediately make a move. Instead, he ordered the Blood Slave in his mind. Continue to investigate the other families and find Count Dracula as soon as possible. The Blood Slave responded, flapped its wings and continued to fly to the next blood breed family settlement. Emmosher used Dragon Shadow Step and flew toward Quanhua City. Previously, from the Broodmother's consciousness, he knew that the largest broodmother in Country M was in Manhattan, Quanhua City. It was more than 2,900 kilometers from San Francisco to Manhattan. With the speed of Emmosher's Dragon Shadow Step and the delay on the way, it only took him 6 minutes. At this time, Emmosher was standing on the first floor of the World Trade Center. This building was also known as the Freedom Tower. It was 541 meters tall, the tallest tower in Manhattan. Looking down from here, Manhattan was shrouded in the morning fog. There were dozens of tall buildings, piercing through the morning fog, towering over the city. Emmosher's Dragon Will covered the entire city, investigating everything here. This was worthy of being the city with the most skyscrapers. The entire city was divided into two halves by red and green. The eastern half was covered with green vines and plants. Among them there was a base, Manhattan Base. The buildings on the western half were covered with blood-red vines. These blood-red vines finally gathered in a huge broodmother. This huge broodmother occupied half of the city. One had to know that the entire Manhattan was about 60 square kilometers. This broodmother occupied half of the city. This was definitely the largest broodmother that Emmosher had seen so far. This broodmother was not sealed like other broodmother. Instead, only half was sealed. The other half was like a bloody mouth that wanted to devour the remaining half of the city. Emmosher was secretly amazed. This broodmother had a big appetite. It wanted to devour the entire Manhattan. Looking down with the blood dragon's eye, he saw that there were more than 10 level 10 mutated zombies around the broodmother. There were countless strong mutated zombies. Chapter 176. This huge mother nest was actually trying to swallow the entire city. And there was no doubt that if this continued, it would swallow the entire Quanhua City. Emmosher did not immediately attack this mother nest. With the strength of the more than 10 level 10 super mutated zombies in this mother nest, it would be easy to attack the base on the other side of the city. But they had not attacked until now. It was obvious that there were other reasons. He planned to go to the base to investigate the situation first. With a thought, he probed the base. He saw that the base occupied 1/3 of Manhattan. On the high walls of the base there were all kinds of cannons. Outside the high walls surrounding the base, there were dozens of tanks parked. But these cannons and tanks had long been rusted. Obviously no one had used them for a long time. Under such circumstances, there must be a special reason why they could still defend until now. The high walls divided Manhattan into two. Inside the high walls was a green world. Outside the high walls was a blood-red world of zombies. But these zombies did not seem to have any intention of attacking the base. Just as Emmosher was investigating, the thick metal door on the high walls slowly opened with a creaking sound. When the zombies outside the door saw the door open, their eyes were filled with bloodthirsty gazes. But even so, they did not pounce on the door. Instead, they seemed to be waiting for something. At this time, 2 naked men were carried out by 4 hunters and thrown out of the door. The 2 men begged and screamed miserably. "No, please don't do this, don't do this." However, the hunters ignored their pleas. The creaking sound rang out again. The door slowly closed. Seeing this, the 2 men hurriedly pounced on the door. They kept banging on the door. They banged on the door. This banging sound echoed on the quiet street. At the same time, the eyes of the zombies who seemed to have been hungry for a long time bloomed with blood-red light. They roared and pounced on the two naked men with bared fangs and brandished claws. The two naked men were also hunters. They quickly condensed their genetic weapons and cleared the zombies around them. In just a few minutes, the hundreds of zombies around them were cleared. A thin layer of blood mist slowly rose into the air. But the two naked men did not have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a shadow flashed past them without warning. A line of blood appeared on each of their necks. When they turned around, they saw a zombie looking at them. There was a fist-sized hole on the zombie's face. Even so, it was still grinning. The scene looked very strange. The two naked men only had time to say, "Super mutation." He fell to the ground. The surrounding zombies immediately pounced on him. It was like a pack of wolves surrounding a sheep and gnawing at it. In just 5 minutes, the two of them were eaten. In front of this group of hungry zombies, the two hunters didn't even have the chance to turn into zombies. On the watchtower behind the high wall, the two hunters shook their heads as they watched the scene unfold. Immortality was puzzled when he saw this. What the hell happened in the Manhattan base? Using humans to feed zombies? Wasn't this a little too freakish? Shaking his head, he decided not to think about things that he couldn't figure out. He leaped and landed on the ground. He didn't use his telekinesis or wings to reduce the impact of his landing. The body of a level 7 Great Hunter was strong enough to withstand the impact of falling more than 500 meters. The wind whistled in his ears. The skyscraper next to him was rising rapidly. The next moment, boom, Immortality's feet slammed heavily on the ground. The entire street, with Immortality as the center, instantly caved in a bowl-shaped crater with a radius of more than 50 meters. The ground within a radius of 100 meters cracked inch by inch under this huge impact. At this time, Immortality was slowly walking forward. Hundreds of zombies on the ground nearby were all sent flying hundreds of meters away by the force of his move. After landing, each of them had broken bones and tendons and couldn't get up. After hearing the noise, the zombies in the nearby streets all roared and rushed over. But soon, Sanguisurincus extended from the ground. This caused the Sanguisurincus to pierce into the bodies of these zombies, and then they were instantly torn apart. As long as Immortality passed by within a radius of 100 meters, Sanguisurincus as thick as a human thigh would constantly appear. These Sanguisurincus were like kelp, swaying in the air. As long as a zombie got close to the Sanguisurincus, it would be torn apart in an instant. As for those ordinary zombies, they were still stupid enough to pounce on them. But the strong mutated zombies and even the super mutated zombies didn't dare to come forward. Just like this, Immortality walked all the way to the entrance of the base. The zombies on the nearby streets were almost all cleared by him. On the sentry tower, the two hunters were still puzzled. Why were there suddenly no roars of zombies nearby? At this time, in the blood fog outside the entrance, a human figure slowly walked over. Is that a human? Seems like an Asian. What's going on? How could a human pass through the entire infected area? In his surprise, a hunter shouted to Immortality, who was below him. Stop. Who are you? Or a zombie? Immortality didn't pay attention to them. With a leap, he instantly soared into the air. He crossed the high wall and landed in the base. Seeing this, the two hunters hurriedly sounded the alarm. At the same time, their hurried shouts came from the loudspeaker. A humanoid creature has broken in. It's very likely to be an infected person. An unidentified humanoid creature has broken in. It's very likely to be an infected person. Because zombies and vampires were all in human form, they collectively called them humanoid creatures. Soon, more than 200 hunters and 60 psychokinesis rushed out from all directions, surrounding Immortality. Immortality's cold eyes glanced around. Dragon's mind instantly spread out. It pressed down on all the hunters and psychokinesis. Bang 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 bang. All the hunters and psychokinesis were instantly crushed to the ground by the huge pressure. Psychokinesis was slightly better. When they fell to the ground, they only felt extreme pain in their bodies. As for the 200+ hunters, they smashed down with such force that the cement road cracked open. All the hunters raised their heads in pain and looked at this Asian in horror. It was obvious that this Asian was psychokinesis. But was there really a psychic in this world with such strong telekinesis? On the other hand, the fear and shock in the hearts of the 60 or so psychics far exceeded that of the hunters. As psychokinesis, they knew clearly that even if they reached level 10 psychokinesis, they were far from being able to do this. In other words, this Asian psychokinesis had already surpassed the limit of level 10 psychokinesis. It had reached a level above psychokinesis. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.